To the public that's tuned in here, we just have a small delay because of the weather. We're waiting for one counselor to come on. So we're going to give it 5 minutes and then we'll get started. Thank you. Okay, welcome council, and I'm going to call the meeting to order. Is there any conflict amongst the council members here tonight? Seeing none, I'll need a motion for the published agenda tonight. Can I have a mover, please? Councillor Bowman and Councillor Bjorkman. All in favor? That is carried. And I guess we'll go right into the reports, and I guess we can start right with Chris Loretto, if you're ready. Chris, I think I pronounced your name correct, didn't I?
That's great, Your Worship. Yep, Chris Loretto with Strategy Corp, and pleased to be with you, Your Worship, and your council colleagues to present the final report of the service delivery review, which we were retained to conduct on behalf of the town of Essex. I will share my screen and what I'm proposing to do this evening, and I'm joined by my colleagues Lauren Wyman and Yael Boyd and Tony Haddad and Umar Sheikh, is to go through each of the recommendations, and after I present a recommendation, pause to allow an opportunity for council to ask questions of us or to make any comments that they see fit with respect to what we're presenting. So if that's okay, Your Worship, if I can be given permission to share my screen.
Yep.
I'll get it going, and I'll use the version that is in the council report so that there's no page confusion issues as well, so it's easier to follow.
Okay, that's great.
Okay. I'm just waiting for the permission.
Through you, Mr. Chair, do you have the share screen button on your screen, Chris?
I do. It says host is disabled, participant screen sharing. Okay. Excellent. Thank you so much.
Welcome.
Okay. And I'll share my screen here. Again, thank you very much. And I must say from the top that it's been a real pleasure to work with the Town of Essex members of council and members of the senior team and frontline staff in being able to undertake this service delivery review. As council will recall, we were with you back in October where we presented the findings from our current state assessment, where we had taken the time to understand the municipality, its context, and understanding its current operations for the purposes of identifying where there may be improvement opportunities that we could explore more fully through the third phase of the project, which is which culminates in this final in this final report. And so I'm pleased to say, based on the feedback that we did receive from council at our October meeting, that we took the opportunity to work through each of the opportunities for improvement that were identified in the current state. We felt it was really important to be able to explore all the opportunities that we identified and to make proposals for the town's consideration around the cost benefit and what it may look like from an implementation perspective going forward. And before I get into the specific recommendations in each of the initiatives that we have identified and worked through in the final report, I do think it's important to kind of put our recommendations in context. And the context is that the town of Essex, to council's credit and to administration's credit, is a very well managed and sustainable municipality. As we noted in our current state report, the town of Essex is in a financially healthy and sustainable position. When we look at you in terms of how you perform against the Ministry of Municipal Affairs and Housing's key metrics, you exceed. And then when we look at you in the context of the set of peer comparators that we evaluated against as well, your reserves, you've successfully built those up and you're outperforming the recommended targets
Chris,
that have been set by the Ministry of Municipal Affairs. Sorry, internet issues, even in Toronto, I apologize. Everybody can hear me now, Your Worship?
Yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
Okay. You've successfully built up your reserves. You're outperforming key metrics, even when we look at you in the context of comparators. Your capital spending has been financially prudent, and the town has grown reserves consistently and managed both your short and long-term debt. The town has sustainable debt management, and obviously we noted that there's always a need to continue to balance how you're going to do capital projects, in particular in balancing what you may do through debenture and what you may do through saving through your reserve policy. The town's revenues have consistently exceeded expenses, and so you've always been in a healthy bottom line position. Your asset management to life cycle reserve and your movement towards a fully funded asset management plan demonstrates keen awareness of the need to invest in the future and the growth of the municipality. And so your overall, when we looked at your services, you're delivering your services very efficiently, and they're high quality services. And you're doing it when in a context where you do have a fairly lean staffing complement relative to your peer comparators. So your staff are highly productive in delivering the services that residents rely on. You do, as a town, prioritize customer service. You do, as a town, have a clear strategic vision and have a clear set of priorities that are shared and understood by both council and administration. And your workforce is committed from council to management to the very front line, are committed to continuous improvement. And so overall, it's a very good news story. And that makes doing a service delivery review both easier in some respects, but also harder in the sense that the things that we've identified as improvement opportunities are really in the vein of continuous improvement. And there is an opportunity through the recommendations we're making to you this evening to realize productivity savings so that you're dedicating staff capacity to higher value added activities that deliver greater value to the residents of Essex. And there's an opportunity to better manage long-term risks for the municipality and generate long-term savings through a culture of continuous improvement and looking at opportunities where shared services may make sense for the municipality to do with its colleague municipalities or the county as a way of continuing to deliver needed services at better value for money. Overall, we identified 29 improvement opportunities. When we assess those opportunities, the annual net benefit to the town is potentially $900,000. And that is a mix of both productivity savings. 22 of the opportunities that we identified and that we've investigated and are presenting to you tonight lend themselves to those productivity gains. So it may not be bottom line savings, but they are productivity enhancements, again, that free up staff capacity. That is one way to continue to be a lean and productive organization, is freeing up staff time for higher value added activities. And 6 of the identified opportunities relate to mostly around shared service opportunities that can really generate long-term bottom line cost savings for the municipality, and ensure that there's better value for money. So implementing the initiatives that we're recommending, we believe will achieve positive benefits for the town. The details on these things we'll go through tonight and have a chance to really test them, and we'll be able to answer your questions. We believe the recommendations that in the savings associated with those, we tried to ground those in data that was available through the town, where data wasn't as easy to find. We did look at leading literature and best practices based on our experience in the municipal sector to try to come to some sort of conclusion as to what the quantitative benefit will be to the town. And so, we believe that what we're leaving you with here today is a set of initiatives that, if implemented, will go a long way towards improving the overall effectiveness and efficiency of the organization, and create a more resilient organization to deal with the future risks that all municipalities are facing in terms of service delivery demands in a constantly evolving economic situation. So just as a refresher for members of council in terms of how we got to this point here today, we had three kind of key phases to the work that we did to get to the final service delivery review. The first phase was the kickoff. The second phase was the current state assessment, which we briefed council on in October. And then the third phase was taking the opportunities for improvement that we identified at the current state in the current state report, and really buttoning those down in terms of a cost benefit analysis and what implementation could look like for the municipality. We assessed the opportunities, and we developed our recommendations based on internal and external data that was available to us, looking at peer municipalities and peer municipality practice, looking at leading municipal practice in a lot of respects, and also relying on the benefit of the conversations that we've had with council and senior administration, and working with staff and back and forth as we developed each of the opportunities that we're presenting here tonight. I won't spend a lot of time on slide 9, because I think I've covered it in the kind of the context that I've set around the municipality performing very well, and your futures more around continuous improvement opportunities to make the organization more resilient and to sustain those service levels that you are delivering. The current state very much found that. One of the things that I think is important to keep in mind, just from the current state, and as we're looking at the ever-changing fiscal situation of senior governments, is that one of the risk exposures that you have as a municipality is around the Ontario Municipal Partnership Fund money that the town does receive. You amongst your peers are a higher recipient of those dollars. And so, keeping an eye on that and doing what you can through this process to free up capacity and find savings is part of an insurance package, I think, against the fiscal pressures the province is facing, and what that may mean downstream for the funding that is available from the province through the OMPF and other programs for the municipality. The internal strengths and weaknesses, I won't spend a lot of time on. These are the same strengths and weaknesses that were provided in the current state report. What I'd like to do now is just, at a high level, explain, what we looked at in terms of the cost benefit analysis. Then I'll get into the specific initiatives. Slides 14 and 15 in the report summarize the benefits and the investment requirements for each of the initiatives that we have identified. Now, not every initiative carries with it an investment requirement or even a potential quantifiable benefit. There are a number of initiatives that are just better ways of doing business, or are just good hygiene in terms of how the operation is run. What we did do for initiatives where we could quantify is we did our best to estimate what an investment level would be. That investment could be in terms of any plans or studies that you may need to undertake, or it may be related to any additional staff or other resources that we're recommending in order to realize the initiative. And then we looked at what the potential gross benefit was and took off the investment cost to try to get to a net benefit amount. The potential benefit that is quantified, and so as you will see, there is a range, up to $900,000. We think at the low end it's just over $600,000. Is a mix of what we call light green savings. And when we talk about light green savings, we mean savings associated with better productivity. So things that don't necessarily hit the bottom line, but again, free up staff and other capacity to be redeployed elsewhere in service delivery. There are dark green savings, and those are bottom line cost savings that could be achieved to either relieve pressure on the fiscal position of the municipality, or to actually free up dollars to be redeployed elsewhere based on decisions of council and advice of staff. And then there's potentially also new revenue streams or incremental revenues that could be realized. And so the net benefit is a mix of those three things. And that's how we get at the potential benefit savings here at the bottom line of slide 15. So your worship, what I'll do is I've thrown a lot at council already in terms of context and kind of our approach to this assignment. Before I get into the details of each of the initiatives, I'll pause here to see if there are any questions that I can answer from councilors.
Yeah, thank you, Chris. We can go to council. Yeah.
Chris, can you stop sharing your screen, please? So we can
Yes.
see?
Yep.
Any questions from council at this point? No? Seeing none, Chris, we can continue.
Perfect. Thank you. Okay. So now we'll get into the specific opportunities, and as you can appreciate, hopefully you have a hot cup of coffee or your beverage of choice to get into the details here this evening. Just a couple things methodologically that in terms of the presentation of the opportunities, what we tried to do is provide a kind of a summary dashboard for each grouping of initiatives that maps out the potential benefit in terms of their size, and also looking at kind of where they rest on a kind of a 4-quadrant matrix of relative to the risk inherent in pursuing the initiative, and then what the impact would be on service levels. So some initiatives are big and may carry, less risk with them and have a major impact, or vice versa. Some things may be small, but are, more risky and may not have a huge impact on service levels. We try to give you some sense of what the initiative involves, so that that can inform future decision making, particularly around prioritization of the recommendations and how you deal with them on a go forward basis. We also did a bit of an impact analysis where we looked at four criteria related to each initiative, looking at the service impact on a scale, and we looked at these things on a scale of 1 to 3. The service impact being, 1, not much of an impact on service, 3 being it would have a great impact on service. If it hits a 3, that means it would have a positive impact on service. The investment levels, is it just a few bucks, or maybe just some additional staff capacity dedicated to it, or does it require a more significant investment of financial or other resources to realize the initiative? the risk in pursuing the initiative. So what are the key risks associated with it? We do have some advice from time to time on how to mitigate some of those risks. And then also looking at the timelines in terms of, is it something that is relatively easy to implement, or is it something that will have a longer gestation period to implement? And we try to assess that. So if it's a quick thing, it will get one number. If it's something that takes a little bit longer, it'll get another rating out of the 3-point scale. So what I'm going to do, Your Worship, is start with those opportunities we identified as enterprise-wide. So they're not specific to a department, but they are things that are important to the corporation as a whole, and lend themselves to a whole of enterprise approach to delivery. I'll start with the bucket of initiatives around governance and strategy. There are 4 opportunities here. One is around, training for council to help you grow in your continue to grow in your roles as governors of the town. The second opportunity is around establishing a clear framework for making sure that the strategic plan is always cascading throughout the organization, so that the organization's aligned around what the strategic priorities are set by council. The third opportunity is around establishing clear expectations and guidelines for departments in terms of how they translate strategy into their operational plans on an annual basis. And then the fourth opportunity is around being more proactive and a bit and more leading in practice around enterprise risk management. All of these initiatives, lend themselves to what we call the light green dollars, so productivity enhancements. So a couple of them carry quantifiable benefits that result in freed up staff capacity and freed up council capacity to focus on higher value added matters. So with respect to the first initiative that we've identified in this bucket, it's around council staff relationships and council's development. And, you may recall at the current state that there's always work to be done in terms of the relationship between the administration and council, and making sure that you're aligned and that you're performing your best with respect to your responsibilities in making the town the great place that it is, and also too, a desire to, help council continue to better understand its role, but also to help you grow through an annual education plan of your own that allows you to grow as governors of the organization. And so the initiative here involves 2 things. One is continued training on the roles of staff and council. And I know that, this is something that happens, at the beginning of every term of council. One of the things that we're trying to kind of bring in from the boardroom to the council chamber through our recommendation, and this is a consistent recommendation across the various service delivery reviews that we've been doing across the province, is that you consistently refresh yourself on the roles and responsibilities of both staff and council, and continue to work at those roles and responsibilities, so that that you're focused, you're leveraging each other's respective strengths, and frankly, the accountabilities are a lot more clear. This is something that is always worthwhile doing. Boards in the not-for-profit and private sectors, what they do is on an annual basis, at least, they refresh themselves on their role as directors of the corporation, and what their fiduciary roles are, what their oversight roles are, what their policy making roles are. And that helps, because the deeper you get into a term of council, or deeper you get into a term as a director of a board, sometimes those things seem far away, and having that refresher is always helpful. The second piece is that, we want to push you to a leading practice where, supporting counselors in their role and helping them grow in their role as governors of the town isn't a once in every 4-year thing that happens with, you get the onboarding orientation at the beginning of term, and then, you hopefully get reelected, and then that's the next time you see that. What we want to see is council take charge of its own development, set its own priorities for the things that it wants to better understand collectively. And those could be things around legislation. Those could be things around how the town does certain things. Those could be, trying to, get ahead of issues by being briefed earlier on things that may be coming at the town, have to deal with in the future. So setting an annual education plan for yourself, carving time out on a quarterly basis, and we're not talking days, we're talking, carving out an hour of a council meeting to be briefed on a topic of council's choosing is what we're recommending. In terms of the benefits of this initiative, we think it will always lend itself to improved council staff relations and the productivity that's inherent in good relations. We think it will continue to support you in improving the overall organizational culture. And that's not to say there's a problem, but organizational culture is something you'll always have to work at. And we also believe that will support increased transparency and accountability. Some of the challenges around this is, sometimes, council doesn't want to waste time and money on themselves, but I think you have to, because you do a very important job and you're asked to make a lot of weighty decisions. And so one of the challenges may be, I don't think I need that, but we would encourage you to say you should. And it's a good practice, and the organization will benefit overall, not just you as an individual counselor. In terms of the impact of this initiative, it would be foolish of me to say I can draw a straight line to how it will impact service levels. But I firmly believe that as we grow and evolve, that does make for better decision making. That does make for better relationships that support the services that are being delivered to residents. We do believe that there will be an investment that is required here in terms of around the council staff training, or even setting aside a bit of money to bring in outside experts to brief you on whatever you set in your own education agenda. So an annual allocation of 10 to 15,000 to support bringing in that expertise is what we've budgeted and factored into our analysis. We think from a risk perspective, it's a low risk. It's something that not a whole lot of risk is taken on. I think there are big potential upsides from a culture and accountability perspective, and then from a timelines perspective, it's something that is relatively low hanging fruit, something that you could begin doing into next year. Overall, in terms of implementation, things that you're going to have to think about as you implement or consider implementing this initiative is that, making sure that, you're committing to an annual process around refreshing roles and responsibilities, education, and that you are making the time and setting as a priority for yourself to set an annual training agenda and sticking to that, and not necessarily letting the urgent get in the way of the important. And it's important that you invest some time in yourselves to grow in your roles as counselors. So with that, Your Worship, I'll stop there, and happy to take questions on this specific initiative from council.
Okay, if you can just, Chris.
Stop sharing. Yep.
Deputy Mayor Meloche, go ahead.
Yes, to Mr. Loretto. So the 10 to 15,000 additional dollars that you're talking about in staff training, is that on top of the amounts of money that you're talking about, on top of the amounts of money that we already give to that category? Is that correct?
Yeah. Or this would be money that the council is investing in itself, Deputy Mayor. And so it would be an incremental amount over what may already be in the budget to support and fund staff training within the organization. Yes.
Is there something specific right now so in the process of determining that we needed an additional 10 to 15,000 for that purpose, was there a review done of what we already have training that we already do within our budget to see if there were anything that we were doing currently that didn't need to be done? Maybe we're doing overkill on some lines of education. And furthermore, do you have specific examples of what kind of training that you think needs to be done?
Yeah, so it's a good question, Deputy Mayor. In terms of detailed spend analysis on the training that is on the dollars that are already allocated for training, we didn't do that. It's quite possible that there may be dollars that can be freed up there. Typically, and I don't know this for sure to be the case in Essex's case, but typically there's an underspend in training because of the time available, or in an environment like COVID, there ain't a whole lot of training to go to beyond some virtual training that may be offered by the various municipal associations. So there certainly is potentially the possibility of finding that $10,000 to $15,000 within existing allocations. The type of training that we've reserved this for is, it's not unusual for councils to pull in either not many do it on an annual basis. Some folks do it kind of at the beginning of term and midterm. Is to bring in an outside facilitator to refresh folks on the roles and responsibilities, refresh yourself on your code of conduct, work through any areas of opportunity for improvement that you look for. And there are folks in the marketplace that provide that service. Some folks may be familiar with Nigel Bell Chamber, folks of that nature who councils bring in as a kind of a third party to facilitate that kind of training. On the other stuff, on what we're recommending in terms of your annual own education, those don't have to be cost items at all. It may be asking staff to prepare a briefing on the details of the Planning Act or things of that nature, but they should be things that council as a whole view as important. Or it will be linked to helping you deal with some of the things that you have been dealing with or know that are going to be coming before you in the year. And so those things don't have to be cost items at all. You can rely on internal resources, or there are always folks with expertise who are more than happy to lend that expertise on a pro bono basis for a council.
Okay, thank you. And as far as the amount of money that we spend, town of Essex, on these training courses for our staff, where do we sit in most that you've had an opportunity to review, like most other municipalities? Now, are you suggesting the additional 10 to 15 because we're lagging behind other communities, or
No.
It's just okay?
No, we're recommending it to say that there is the potential that you'll want to bring somebody in from the outside to support this, and so saying setting aside some of those monies in case you want to do that is prudent. What councils would typically spend on bringing somebody in to do that type of training, based on our experience, because our firm does this as well, is somewhere in the neighborhood of $10,000 to $15,000 to provide that training.
Okay, thank you for your answers.
Thank you.
Anybody else from council? Okay, Chris, I guess you can continue.
Perfect. Thank you. So the next opportunity is around building in a corporate strategic planning framework. And what we identified at the current state was that we noted that there was a broad senior level support for the strategic plan, but there was some uncertainty about implementation and progress. and understanding, how the corporation is performing against what the priorities are that council set out for itself. Part of that for us is, making sure that the strategic plan is something that informs the various other master plans, municipal policies, the annual budget, and the annual department work plans. That it doesn't sit as a separate standalone, that is integrated through and cascades through the organization. And so we're recommending a framework that does that, and ensures as well that you're building in as a permanent and regular feature of the municipality's governance, the review of the strategic plan, and having staff come forward on a regular basis to say, here's where we are in the plan. Here are the risks to the plan. Here's where we're ahead of schedule, or have already completed things. Here's where we may be lagging a bit behind, and using that information to inform other decisions, particularly around the annual budgeting process, so that council can work with staff to make any decisions around things that priorities that may need to change, or resources that may need to be reallocated to deliver on strategic priorities. We're also recommending at the staff level that there's clear accountability for the 6 priorities and the 21 initiatives that are in your strategic plan, and that these leads be responsible for communicating initiatives to their own team members within the organization, and helping people really understand how what they do on a day-to-day basis supports the delivery, the implementation and execution of the strategic priorities that are set by council. And a priority for the leads in SMT should be to include performance measures in departmental work plans, which I'll speak about in a moment, and report on the progress, and use those performance measures as the basis for reporting back to council on how things are progressing in the strategic plan. In terms of a service impact, you set strategy and you set priorities for a reason, and most your priorities are all focused around how you can do more and better for your residents. So being clear about the priorities, being clear about where you are in the implementation of those priorities, and being clear throughout the organization as to how everybody contributes to those priorities, we believe it can have a significant impact on the quality of services that are delivered. The investment is really no net additional investment. It's about a reprioritization, and also setting in place a regular cadence of reporting that allows everybody to be up to speed on where you're at with your strategic plan. The risk, we believe it's relatively low and can have significant upside in terms of how the place is working to achieve its shared goal. And this is also something that, being midterm, this is an initiative that can start now. In terms of the things that you'll need to consider as you look at, to implement something like this, is that you need to implement the status updates. Our view is that they should happen on a quarterly cadence, along with, at the end of the year, and particularly as you begin to get into budget deliberations season, take some time, a couple hours, to actually really reflect on where you've been and where you're going, and what you may need to factor into budget decision making around the implementation of strategic priorities. We're also suggesting that that some additional training be done for lead staff, so that they are more comfortable in developing and managing key performance measures, and linking strategy to the operations that the administration is responsible for. So at the end of the day, we think the benefits here are increased transparency and accountability, continuous improvement, improved performance of the organization overall. The challenges in these types of things are always around securing buy-in of council and staff stakeholders. Making sure that staying on top of the plan is something that people know to carve out time and focus on. and making sure that you're not biting off more than you can chew, that you are matching your ability to stay on top of things with the staff and financial resources you have at hand to do that. So, Your Worship, with that, I'll stop there and happy to answer any questions council may have.
Any questions from council? Deputy Mayor Malash, go ahead.
Just a general comment. I don't think that this is anything that council or administration would find inappropriate. I think it's something that most counselors, most persons on council are going to say, yeah, that'd be great that if we had a more regular review of our strategic goals and how they tie to what we're actually doing in operations and capital expenditures. So this does make a lot of sense, and I think it's a great idea. Thanks.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor.
I agree with you too, Deputy Mayor. That's a good point. Anybody else from council? Councillor Bjorkman, go ahead.
Yes, thank you. Through Your Worship, I was looking at, I believe it's the next slide, actually shows the timeline for introducing that the plan. And I think, a quarterly report is pretty aggressive to try to get within the number of reports and different things that we look for as council. And I agree with the idea of it, but I'm pretty sure the semi-annual, twice a year, do a report in the middle of the year and then do the scorecard at the end of the year. I like the idea of the scorecard. I like the idea of putting your finger on individual things and saying, here's where we've moved this. But to do that quarterly is a little aggressive. But I agree with the idea of being able to keep on top of those things and having somebody responsible to the lead for it and answer to that question. So, yep, it's all very good. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. And you're absolutely right. And I always counsel, don't let perfection be the enemy of the good here. Semi or twice a year cadence will make sense. As you become more practiced, you may decide you want to move to quarterly. You may say, things are working so well and we've integrated this into how we do our reports and our decision making that maybe the once a year is all you need. But the important thing is to be constantly reflecting on, are you hitting the priorities and executing the priorities that council has deemed important for the town?
Thank you, Chris. Anybody else from council? Okay, Chris, you can move on.
Okay. Thank you. And so this is the slide that Councillor Bjorkman was referring to in terms of the quarterly cadence, but this is just, as I said, guidance. The third piece of the governance and strategy recommendations is around annual departmental level planning processes. And what we heard, what we discovered through the current state is that staff and management identified challenges with connecting individual department activities to the goals identified in the strategic plan. And they noted the need for goal setting kind of at a more, at a departmental and at a more tactical level. And so what we're recommending here is that departments implement an annual process of their own that mimics the process that we've just recommended between administration and council to really align, what is in the strategic plan and what the department's going to do or needs to do from an operational perspective to execute that, and including staff in that process and briefing staff on that process so that they understand what the relationship is between what council has set at, kind of at the top level as the priorities and how that manifests itself in the day-to-day work activities that staff undertake. Having departmental work plans is good hygiene. It obviously better links strategy to operations. The plans over time can include performance measures against key initiatives, and it's I say that over time because what we often see is that sometimes we don't have measures in the first place. And if we think of certain measures we want to have in place, but we don't necessarily have the data at our disposal to really set a baseline. So what we've noticed in Essex, and in this, you're not unique by any stretch of the imagination, is that there's a lot of work that can be done in terms of understanding performance measurement and how you set measures and how you collect the data to baseline, and how you collect data to know if you're moving in the right direction against those measures. It's also important to note that this is a leading practice that we've seen in other municipalities, including Tony's former municipality of Tecumseh. Oakville, I know, is big relative to the town of Essex, but we know municipalities in York Region and elsewhere are all moving in this way, and it's a great way to make sure that you are prioritizing the right activities and deploying kind of scarce resources against those things that will maximize impact on services for residents and deliver against the strategic objectives of the municipality. The benefits here are clear direction and linkage of the strategy to operations, the strategic prioritization of effort, particularly if you want to continue to be a lean organization and a highly productive organization, and so related also to staff productivity. The challenges here is it's a change in the way it's a change in the way of doing business. There will be concerns about staff capacity to develop these departmental plans. We're not suggesting something that has to be pages upon pages upon pages, but it really is something more a process to crystallize priorities and set clear departmental work plans to guide all staff. There's also, no doubt going to be a fear that if we produce these plans, that they're going to be used as a blunt object to blame staff if things aren't going well. That's not the intent here, and that's not the way that they should be used. It's more about empowering staff, and you can't have a culture of continuous improvement if you're not putting the planning time and effort into things and learning from your mistakes and making the next year's plan even more precise than the previous year's plan. In terms of impact, we think this can have a significant impact on service, particularly when it comes to prioritizing scarce resources to deliver services. It shouldn't be much of investment. We're asking staff to reprioritize, particularly senior management, to reprioritize some of its focus. The risk, this will involve a level of change management. This will involve a level of learning by doing and not being afraid to make mistakes and improving this over time. And so don't expect perfect in year one, but it's an important practice to build within the organization. And then in terms of timelines, it is certainly something that can begin right away. But again, it's something that will develop and be perfected year over year, and it should make for better service delivery. In terms of implementation, certainly some support in creating departmental business plan templates so that there is some consistency in how the departments are undertaking this prioritization exercise. Use the strategic planning cycle to overlay departmental planning, particularly with Q4 in the budget process, and reflecting on where you are in the strategy and where you want to go and what you need to prioritize through that process. So have those things dovetail together. And using, not just having the plan and then putting it on the shelf, but focusing management effort continually on communicating and socializing the priorities with staff, so that you're building a shared understanding of priorities, and you're building staff buy-in and building staff understanding as to how they're contributing to the overall progress of the place. So, Your Worship, I'll stop share there, and happy to answer any questions that council may have.
Any questions from council? I guess you're all set. Chris, go ahead.
Okay, great. So in terms of the last initiative under this grouping, and this is us pushing you towards leading practice, is around being more disciplined around enterprise risk management. And when I say disciplined, I don't mean you're undisciplined now, but one of the things that is missing in most municipal, certainly master plans or corporate policy suites, is an enterprise risk management policy and plan. The town is obviously, very prudently managed, and we understand that from the current state. You do hold the second highest tangible capital assets per capita amongst your peers. And with that stock, you want to certainly be proactive in managing the risks of your physical infrastructure. There is also managing risks around the finances of the place, particularly senior government support. And then there's always managing risks around the services that you deliver. And so we're suggesting that you develop and implement an enterprise risk management policy that sets out the key categories and specific risks that the municipality is facing, and what you're prepared to do to mitigate those risks. You do risk mitigation now. You buy insurance for certain risks that you're exposed to. A risk management policy will also force you to deal with, some of those more intangible risks around reputation, HR, things of that nature when fully developed. Risk management, return on investment is measured by money that is saved in the future. It's very difficult to point to how, and quantify, risk management is about foregoing costs or avoiding costs as opposed to saving costs. But, it's about having a plan to mitigate risks such as, things like saving time of senior management council when crisis hits. You're able to hit the ground running. COVID certainly galvanizes some thinking around that. It's also about saving professional and third-party costs, in the event of something like a cyber attack. So, having a full appreciation for the full range of risks that the municipality faces and being more proactive in managing those. It is recommended that the risk management policy also become a key decision-making frame for council and a core feature of your budget process, and also the staff reports that come to council. There should be a section in staff reports that come to council, which is, here's the initiative or the decision we're asking to make. Here are the key risks, and here's what we're proposing in terms of approaches to mitigate those risks, so that we're not incurring unnecessary costs. In terms of the impact, we think this can have over the long term a very real impact on service levels and services that you have, particularly by avoiding costs and putting unnecessary strain on the fiscal position of the municipality. We do believe there will be an investment. I don't know that you have the internal expertise to develop the policy and the framework that you'll need. You may have to go outside for third-party services to help you build this. You'll also have to carve out money in your training budget to train staff. And again, this is another example of you're not going to get it perfect overnight. And this is going to be something that you learn by doing, and you refine your practice over time. In terms of risk, making risk management a core competency of the organization does involve change management, hence the recommendation around training, but it's important, and it should be a core competency of the of a modern municipal organization. And in terms of timelines, we're not recommending that you jump right into it, but look at develop a policy in the next year, and then look to begin to implement better risk management practices rooted in the policy in subsequent years. In terms of implementation, it's going to be important to assign a corporate lead to run this. Risk consideration should be added to all staff reports, as we said. The key risk categories, typical risk categories that you'll find are, strategic risks, governance risks, management risks, operational risks, financial risks, stakeholder risks. There are other risks that you can add, but those tend to be the main categories that you'll find in risk frameworks that are produced both in the public sector and the private sector. And as I said, risk planning should be a feature of budget planning and departmental business as well. And you can, to build on the previous recommendation around the departmental plans, it should include a risk analysis and what the department's going to do to mitigate risks related to the services that it delivers. So with that, Your Worship, I'll pause there and I'll stop share to answer any questions that council may have.
Any questions at all from council? Seeing none, Chris, again, so you can continue.
I've got a hot hand, Your Worship, or not. So let's go to the next set of recommendations, which are around people and culture. So we have three recommendations, three initiatives here, and associated recommendations. The first is around developing a comprehensive human resources strategy. The second is about updating and standardizing workforce policies, and we'll get into that in a moment. And then the third opportunity is around standardizing corporate communications policies to support staff engagement and satisfaction through targeted communications, particularly around the strategy of the organization. Again, much like with the previous bucket of opportunities, this is about continuous improvement. It lends itself to light green productivity savings, freeing up staff capacity. So the first initiative is around a human resources strategy. And what we heard at the current state is that staff noted retention and succession planning as areas of concern, given that several critical resources will be retiring in the next few years. A lean organization, and so lean organizations do feel do feel the effects of staff leaving. The organization is lean, but it could be better in terms of developing staff to grow into management roles instead of hiring externally. Looking as well, the municipality could be better in terms of its ability to attract and retain talent, particularly at the manager ranks, to help reduce turnover and the costs associated with that, and not the least of which is having to go to market. And there's an actual dollar cost of having to recruit, but there's also the intangible losses around lost competencies or corporate knowledge and history that can affect service delivery. The other thing too is, human resources strategy is also better understanding what you have and what the capacity of that existing complement of staff is in terms of delivering services and mandates handed to the municipality, both by council and by others like the province. And so having a real appreciation for what the load capacity is of existing staff will help inform what you may need to know and understand in terms of when you need to grow the staff complement, depending on what you need from a service delivery perspective. So the comprehensive human resources strategy would maintain clearly defined roles and responsibilities, policies for the continuity of knowledge, procedures for succession planning, and plans for further developing the town's human capital. You can have a more strategic view of the training dollars that you do allocate in terms of supporting succession planning and career growth within the organization. The town, needs to, do a number of things, not the least of which is a succession plan and ongoing succession planning. You're always in a fight for talent. Being a smaller municipality, bigger municipalities are always looking to raid your high quality staff and lure them with new positions or more money. And so you have to do something proactively to make sure that you're resilient in the face of those pressures. You need to explore retention and growth tactics, in particularly around what you're doing around staff engagement and how you're responding to staff needs, what you're doing in terms of recruitment. And then, identifying benchmarking activities against workforce threats, poaching being one of them. Succession planning is a long-term incremental process, but it's an important part of the overall management of the risk of the place and ensuring that services don't get hurt by turnover of key personnel within the organization. In terms of the impact, the service impact, it has a downstream effect on service levels, but you're looking to minimize the disruption to service that happens when key positions leave or key knowledge or competencies leave the organization. The second, in terms of investment, developing the strategy itself, and then will involve potentially external resources to help you build that plan up. And so we're making some allocation for what those costs would be. From a risk perspective, it really is an important risk mitigation strategy. It's strategic in its importance to the operation of the town. And then in terms of timelines, this is going to You know, the development of the strategy is easy. The execution and managing the strategy is going to be, again, something that is more medium to long term in nature, but building that competency within the organization is important. And so what does that look like from an implementation perspective? You know, the town through the strategy needs to enumerate the skills and competency requirements of its key positions and assess the risk of turnover in those key positions. You know, putting into place a succession planning approach, including identifying high potential staff to progress through the organization to support succession planning. You begin retention activities such as the deployment of a staff engagement survey and, you know, actioning what you're hearing and what you're seeing in that staff engagement survey. And then internal HR may need external services to prepare the strategy and a succession framework. And also to provide advice on how you align what you're investing in training and professional development to ensure the retention of your staff and the succession of key positions within the organization. At the end of the day, the benefits here are increased availability of capable individuals for management positions, fewer financial resources spent in external search for staff. Some of the challenges here is resisting bias. You have to have a dispassionate view of the needs of the organization and not thinking about the key positions in terms of the people who are there, but in terms of the competencies and skills you need in that position. Providing comprehensive and focused opportunities, you know, aligning what you're doing from a talent development training perspective, staff engagement perspective, all to support the overall human resources strategy. And preparing for external factors, you know, COVID has accelerated how people look at work and where work can be done, and it's not a slam dunk in a municipal organization, particularly, if you have dynamics where some parts of the workforce are unionized and some aren't. But you got to prepare not just for what you know today, but the way you know that work is going to change in the future. So with that, Your Worship, I'll stop share and answer any questions that council may have.
Any questions from council? Nothing yet. Oh, sorry, Councillor Bowman, go ahead.
Just a comment. I think this is a very important part as we try to, as he mentioned, retain what we have and make sure we have staff available that are properly trained and move along to that we can promote to fill the vacancies. I think over the years, council has been in support of promoting from within rather than going outside the organization, and that with that goes the requirement that we provide the proper training for the people that are seeking it, and as he mentioned, identify the people that want the training and to move them forward. It's so important in a town like ours, and it has been the wish and direction of council for many years to do exactly that. Do we always succeed? No, but we have promoted in the past time and time again from within, and as long as the person is available and trained accordingly, then it's the ideal situation. So I think important investment in our town. Thank you.
Thank you,
Thank
Councillor.
you, Councillor. Deputy Mayor Malash, go ahead.
Sorry, I think Steve might have been before me. Sorry, Steve. But I just, if there's a magic formula to try and keep people, we certainly like to know it. I think one of the things that we try and promote and over the years, and I think our administration's done it pretty good, starting right at the top with our CAO, is to have a good working atmosphere where people are allowed to communicate and have a little bit of enjoyment while they're at work, because that today is very important, and it's probably been important forever. I know I work at Higham Walkers. I've been there for almost 33 years, and there's so many things that Higham Walkers has promoted as far as programs available to their employees to make that the place they want to be. And I think there's opportunity for us to do a little bit more of that at the town of Essex. And I know it's more difficult to spend money for outside of work events on staff when you're talking about using taxpayer dollars. But if there's a purpose for it, something, in order to be able to retain the persons that we have working for us, then I think it's a valuable way of spending money, even if it is something that's outside of work. I'm gonna, something that's more sociable. Like I'm just gonna throw something out, and I'm not saying this is what we should do, but something like a bowling league or a hockey night or different events that you get the family involved as well. Other, it doesn't, not necessarily the person that's at work. Maybe a youth club for the kids of our employees, something like that that's different than what other communities around us are providing to their staffs. And I think that's maybe one way, because I know personally that the staff that we have right now, I believe, works together so well. And I believe that there's a lot of persons on council right now that believe the same thing, that we've got a little bit of a magical thing going on with our staff, and we'd like to retain them. But is that something, Chris, that you see happening at other communities across your realm of working with, that
It's,
potentially is one method of keeping workers?
Deputy Mayor, there isn't a whole lot of creativity in the sector when it comes to this. Like, and the thing, why it's important to do something like this is that what makes different generations of workers tick is different, right? And we're fast coming in, particularly with younger generations, where it's not about money, it's not about title, it's about those ancillary benefits of being part of an organization. A number of the things that you shared there now, like, my family's involved, or, I get, there is this perk, or there's this, certain thing that is associated with it. So, I can't say, and I'll defer to Tony here if you're seeing, but in the municipalities I've been in, not, most places don't even have the basics, which is, are you even surveying your staff on an annual basis to see where their heads are at, right? And then, based on that information, figuring out what you can do to continuously improve the culture and making it an employer of choice and things of that nature. Tony, any leading practices that you've seen?
There's been a variety of them that I've observed in different municipalities, but I believe the reference to multi-generational workforce lends itself to trying to recognize what everyone is expecting, or what they would find satisfying in terms of support or well-being within their organization. And I think it starts with employee satisfaction surveys, where the employees are approached to provide their inputs as to what they like, what they don't like, and some of the things that may prove of value to them. Also, the issue of work-life balance is important, particularly to the younger generation. And I certainly am not going to speak for them, but at the same time, asking of them to determine, what would motivate them certainly bodes well for the employer, in that they're given the opportunity to express those views, and hopefully is supported by their organization.
So at the end of the day, Deputy Mayor, there is room for creativity, and not everything has to be a big cost item. Oftentimes it's the little things, the intangibles, that keep a person happy in their role in an organization.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Bjartman, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think part of the succession planning thing is we're victims of our own success. When you run a lean corporation, you don't have a lot of people that can be the next person in waiting. If you've got a good leadership team and you've got people below them in positions that have aspirations for that leadership, well, they may not want to wait around until that next level is gone. If you don't have a number of positions in between, it can be difficult to keep those people because they're looking to advance, they're ready to go, and so they actively pursue those roles. So for us, we've been fortunate where we've had people that are ready to move on, and we've brought new people in. They've worked with us for a couple of years and then moved into those positions. We're fortunate there, but I think it's a lofty goal. I love succession planning. Everybody wants to use it, but it can be difficult in an organization like ours.
Yeah, it's a good point, Counselor. And again, the key here is something has to be done because you can't be a total victim to circumstance. But it's not going to be the ideal because the ideal is that you have built-in redundancy, and that doesn't make sense for your organization. But one of the things, and it's not recommended here, but we came to this conclusion in the work that we did in Leamington was being proactive about identifying a pipeline of talent that you like and that like you, as a way of cutting the costs of going to market and bringing people in. So the recommendation in Leamington last night was around a formalized co-op program where you're focusing in on third and fourth year students or college students that are fairly well progressed in their diploma programs and bringing them in. You get the advantage of capacity. There are senior level government dollars on the table to offset the costs of bringing those folks in. There are institutions like Windsor, University of Windsor and St. Clair College that have entire apparatuses set up to actually support students in finding those opportunities to learn by doing that matches their field of study. And that gives you a chance to get capacity, kick tires on potential candidates. They get to kick tires on you. And so you're a more resilient organization over the long term, because if somebody does leave, you're in a better position to bring in that next generation of talent. And so those are just small examples of things that you can do, knowing that you're always, by virtue of your size and the fact that you are lean, you're going to be a poaching target for bigger municipalities or municipalities with, quite frankly, bigger wallets. But it's little things that you can be doing to try to mitigate some of the risk associated with that turnover and succession.
If I may, Chris, being the mayor, walking through our offices here and our staff, I know council can relate to this. Going back 4 or 5 years ago, we did have turmoil here. And I can tell you, walking through, I spent a lot of time walking through, talking to our staff. And I can't see, to be honest with you, any of our staff members even thinking about leaving right now. They're happy. The atmosphere here it's so positive. The growth that's happening in this town, it's exciting. And you can see that through our staff members here, through all our administration and all the women and men working here. You can see it. I mean, the way we're moving forward and the happiness, you can tell it's a joy for them to be here. So I'll just pass that along.
No, that's great. And this recommendation doesn't come because there's an issue, but you want to sustain that, Your Worship, right? You want to make sure that continues to be the case, and that if a key leader does turn over for whatever reason, the organization is resilient enough to pick up and continue with that culture.
Yeah, and further to that, Chris, I think we recognize that. Some of our key people here, we do compensate them pretty well. I'm sure council will agree with that, and I'm sure staff will. So we are really protective on what we have here. We're going to pay. We're not going to lose our staff, believe me.
That's good. That's good to hear. Okay. So Your Worship, in council, the next initiative is, sorry, let me just move here, around standardizing workforce policies. And so what we heard at the current state is that some of the organization's workforce policies are inconsistently applied and inconsistently updated, causing some confusion amongst staff. Staff noted that outdated workplace policies and performance management impact their perceptions of the support the employer is giving them in their role. There's a lack of standardized high quality workforce policies. The lack of standardized high quality workforce policies may be a barrier to talent recruitment and retention, and there's a desire for increased professional development training opportunities amongst staff. You can see how these things build, right? Because, you know, HR strategy, knowing the competencies you need in the organization can better focus training opportunities, departmental plans. You can figure out what you need to close any gaps and direct training. So all these things fit together. So as part of the development of the human resources strategy, you know, that investment in that strategy has to include a comprehensive review of all existing HR policies, making sure the performance management policy is up to date and is meeting the needs of the organization. Standardizing policies on professional development and training, particularly aligned with what the organization needs to build in terms of competencies and capabilities internally to deliver on strategic priorities, deliver on service level expectations. There is also an emerging thing that all workplaces have to get their head around, which is around flexible working models. And so, you know, COVID has certainly, hastened this. We as an employer are dealing with this. You as an employer are going to have to deal with it. What does a flexible working model look like in a municipal organization? Where can that work and where does it not work? What are the guardrails you put in place around any flexible work models that you may have? There is literature out there. And I'll be perfectly honest, Chris laughed at us when we, came up with the productivity saving per FTE, but this is based on leading literature in the field and still a very nascent field. But there is a productivity benefit if people are happy and feel like they have some flexibility in the way that they get their job done. But again, some municipal services are very regimented and don't lend themselves to flexible work models. You got to worry as an organization that you don't create animosity, one part of the organization that can't have a flexible model versus other organizations that lend themselves to more flexible models. So it is fraught territory, but it's something that all municipalities are going to have to get their minds around, particularly coming out of the other side of COVID. So having a clear policy about that is important. So, in terms of, the benefits, having an updated, updated set of policies that are part of the strategy can improve workforce productivity, can increase fairness in terms of how you treat all staff or the perceptions of how staff are treated. It can also lend itself to greater employee morale and engagement. The challenges around this obviously is, the resources to invest and implement this. This is not a light lift, but it's an important lift. And then, if you do move to more flexible models, we do work in a public sector environment. We do work with personal information in a lot of our departments, or we work with sensitive information. And so there are things like, if we were going to have flexible work models and where work actually gets done, what are we doing around security and access to data and, protecting privacy, the things of that nature. In terms of the service impact, the internal consistency will be important and can have an impact on the overall level of quality that you're delivering services. The investment, there is an investment that is required, as we noted, in developing the strategy. The funding that you need for training, or redirecting the funding that you have for training to align with your priorities as an organization. The process standardization actually helps you mitigate risks around your labor force. And so it's important the risk is low here in undertaking this initiative. It's about actually better managing your risks in totality around your HR. And then timelines, this is going to take time. This is not something you can do overnight. It's something that you're going to have to continuously practice and pursue. Overall, from an implementation perspective, this has to be part of the HR strategy. It probably would benefit the organization to convene a working group to conduct a review of its policies. And that is something that, senior management can figure out who takes that on. And then, assessing based on looking at the policies, what is working well, identify gaps in the policy suite, or identify areas where you need to update your policies and go about systematically doing that. And the last thing I would say is part of the overall strategy, it may be too big of a bite to chew around updating all the policies at once. But setting out a multi-year perspective on which and prioritizing policies to be developed or updated is certainly one way to make the work more manageable. Again, not overnight. This is something that you want to build as a competency of the organization over time. So I'll stop there, Your Worship, and answer any questions on this specific initiative.
Any questions from council? Seeing none, Chris, go ahead.
Excellent. Share again. Okay. So the next initiative is around corporate communication strategy. What we heard and what we understand from the current state is that there's currently no formal corporate communications plan to guide the communications practices, both internally and amongst stakeholders within the organization and externally with residents guiding the municipality. Senior management currently serves as the main channel to inform staff on organizational objectives and what's happening. Staff are not always clear about how goals will impact them individually and within the departments, so we've been over that. The town has a communications office that undertakes key activities around media relations, website marketing, those types of things. But these are primarily externally focused activities, and they're not necessarily guided by an overarching strategy of communications. And so what we're recommending here is adding to your master planning suite a master communications plan with a supporting implementation and resourcing plan and departmental level toolkits. Because as much as we, having communications capacity in the organization, has benefits. Communication at the end of the day is still, to an extent, a distributed function, and so providing people with the tools they need to contribute to how the organization communicates both internally and externally is something that we think is important. The initiative could also include the development of that toolkit. We think that having tools available would free up capacity. Being clear in a plan about what you communicate, when you communicate, who communicates it, what channels you use to communicate will free up, we believe will free up time of staff and lead to productivity savings and lead to better overall communications from the corporation, both internally and externally as a result. From an impact perspective, good communications, again, not to sound like a broken record, COVID has really put a fine point on just how important communications is, particularly when you're dealing with both internal and external audiences. There will be an investment required to develop the communications plan, which may be substantial depending on how you allocate staff resources to developing that. This is a lower risk proposition in terms of developing the plan. We think it carries risk management benefits from being clear in who does what and how you do it from a communications perspective. The development of a master plan will probably take upwards of a year to do it, but you see increasingly across the province municipalities adding a master communications plan to their master plan policy suite. In terms of implementation, forming a working group led by strategic communications to work through this is something we think makes sense. It's a way of, assigning leadership within the organization. It's also a way of getting the organization to buy into what it is that needs to be done here. And where possible, we should be, particularly from both for internal communications, but also external communications. What are we doing to measure the effectiveness of our communications? That can be achieved through, a staff engagement survey internally. That can be achieved through, external survey of stakeholders around the communications that you do as a municipality with them. And that using that information and that insight to continually refine what you communicate, how you communicate, and where you communicate what you need to communicate as an organization. So with that, Your Worship, I'll stop there and answer any questions the council may have.
Questions from council? Councilor Bondi, go ahead.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor. I just wanted to say that this is a really important topic, and I think that it's something that if we become a little bit more diligent and efficient with our communication, it would alleviate a lot of frustration with some council members, residents, just being consistent and working on. I find sometimes communication, if it came outward more, then it would be less redundant. Like if I, as a counselor, I have to ask a question and then another counselor could potentially ask that question. Now we're taking up staff time for 2 council members, where if the communication was put out right away, then all of council is aware. Nobody has to ask. So this one is really important. I really, I'm glad to see this come up, and I hope that we can work for improvements in this in the future. Thank you.
Anybody else from council? Okay, Chris, I guess you can continue.
Okay. Thank you. So the next set of enterprise-wide opportunities are around processing and technology, and there are 4 initiatives for consideration and recommendations associated with it. The first one is around expanding the use of the customer relationship management software that you already have and marrying that with a clear customer service policy or policies, depending on the unique requirements of various departments or services within the enterprise. The second recommendation is around conducting a review of the existing records management process and investing in a records management system, and having a software solution to help with records management and managing your legislative compliance requirements, but also enhancing the productivity of staff in terms of being able to quickly find documents to support the services that they're delivering. The third recommendation is just around creating more cross-departmental or interdepartmental communications and collaboration to enhance the overall productivity of the enterprise. And then the last initiative here is around developing standard operating procedures for services. And that obviously helps with staff training, that helps with succession planning, and I'll explain a little bit more about that. Again, these opportunities lend themselves to continuous improvement, productivity, efficiencies that can be realized by the town. So the first opportunity is around customer relationship management software and customer service policy. What we know and what we understand from the current state is that customer service is a priority for council. It's a priority for senior management and staff. You have a tracking system for customer complaints and inquiries, but the number of staff using the software could be expanded. Not enough folks are actually using the system that's available to them. There's also no standard corporate customer service policy, which can lead to siloed approaches within the organization in terms of what the customer service expectations are and what the level of service is that we're delivering to residents and stakeholders. The town also requires training for staff as the software is expanded. So getting user adoption involves, taking some time to train folks on the system and helping them understand how the system works and how the system makes their job easier. So the recommendation here is that the town expand training and staff use of the CRM software that you already have, and that you establish a Town of Essex customer service policy. The software you have, you can also look for additional applications of this software. There may be opportunities to integrate it with your GIS system or other software systems that you're using within the organization. Training has to be a feature to get user adoption, and the sharing of best practices. There are good practices within the organization, and so as part of the development of the policy, trying to capture that and trying to share that across the organization is important. In terms of the impact, the service impact can be quite considerable. No doubt you as counselors deal with, various, gripes or complaints from constituents about, their level of satisfaction with, how quickly a call was returned or how a process is being dealt with. Part of the customer service policy is not just for accountability of staff, it's also for communicating to residents and to stakeholders what they can reasonably expect in terms of a response and service from the municipality. So it can help manage expectations as well. In terms of an investment, expanding the software to for additional users, so you'd need additional licenses, would require an investment of about $16,000. But from a risk perspective, this is really important. Using the CRM more effectively not only allows you to track how things are actually being resolved, but actually allows you to do some analytics over time to understand where are the issues. And, if something is really building up, trying to proactively deal with that, either from a policy or a resourcing perspective, so that you're addressing issues within the organization. This does, even with the additional investment for the license, carry productivity savings associated with it in that standardization and better use of the software that you have. So in terms of implementation, looking at working with the departments and conducting a workshop with those that are providing customer services to inform the development of the Town of Essex customer service policy. The policy should support consistency and reliability for residents and reflect where variability is going to exist, because not every municipal service is the same, and be able to communicate to residents what their expectation should be of the town. Looking to identify who's not using the CRM and being strategic in making in who is to be added to the CRM in its use. And working, as part of your overall communications approach, which we just explored, making sure that you're communicating this both internally and externally once you have these pieces in place. So, Your Worship, I'll stop there and happy to answer any questions from Council.
Any questions from Council? No, Chris, I guess you can continue.
Thank you, Your Worship. The next initiative is around records management, and this is boring but critically important, and Leamington's not alone in needing to improve how it manages its records. What we found from the current state is that the town manages records using a mix of paper-based and digital processes, but there is no central location for storing information. So where you are storing things digitally, they're in various drives across the organization. And quite frankly, I've seen your storage closets and I've seen your storage rooms when I did a tour. So, there's a lot of work to be done with records management. And why is it important? Well, when records aren't easily, not available in one location, you expose yourself to certain compliance risks with records retention legislation and how you manage the information and the security of the information in those records. It also makes accessing information really time consuming. And it actually can frustrate customer service processes. Like if you're dealing with a planning application or whatever it is, it can really frustrate a customer's experience. The other thing too is the current software has capacity to accommodate increased records. You have current software that is able to accommodate increased records management functionality, and that could be further explored. Now, you're not unique in the county either in terms of your needs around records management, further digitization and consolidation of records and the searchability of records. This might be an area where you look to collaborate, either extend your software to some of your colleague municipalities, as a way of lowering costs of, expanding the use of this system. So the recommendation here is that that Essex conduct a review of the existing records management process and invest in an organization-wide electronic document management system. effective records management is a best practice. Using the software consistently and digitizing your records is something that you should be doing, and is both good service and good risk management. And we believe, digitizing and consolidating and making files and records more searchable will actually yield staff productivity savings. The productivity savings here is, somewhere in the neighborhood north of $100,000 once you factor in the investment that you'll have to make. Now, that sounds like a big figure, but it's true. It shaves hours off a person's week or an individual's week, and it shaves hours off many people's weeks in the organization. And that is time not spent trying to find records. That's time spent delivering a service or dealing with the customer more proactively, or time spent dealing with more customers proactively as a result. And so the benefits here are around regulatory compliance, saving staff time and improving access to the information, and streamlining processes. It also, in terms of challenges, is training people on how to use systems when they're actually put in place is key to actually getting the value out of a system. There also may be some territoriality that you have to deal with in terms of records and where they're kept and how they're kept. But at the end of the day, it's a whole of enterprise opportunity, and all in the interest of benefiting the resident or the end user of your services. So in terms of impact, we think this can have a significant service impact, certainly from an investment perspective. That in terms of what you need to invest to expand or acquire a new system, it frees up considerable staff time. This is a fairly low risk initiative to undertake. The available software is pretty standard. A lot of municipalities, you can learn from a lot of municipalities in terms of their approaches, but it does, make for better risk management and reduces your liability with compliance and other things. From an implementation perspective, the town may need to, the town's going to need to assess its current processes, identify its gaps, figure out what the right solution is, whether you have that now or if you need to, procure a different solution to support the digitization of your records. You'll also have to look at your policies and your bylaws to make sure that your policies are up to speed with how you're proposing to better deal with and standardize your approach to dealing with the records of the organizations. It also means looking at your standard operating procedures in terms of how you name file naming conventions and things of that nature that make searching records and accessing and retrieving records a lot easier. So with that, Your Worship, I'll stop there to see if there are any questions from council.
This one's pretty straightforward, but is there any questions at all? No, seeing none, you continue, Chris. Go ahead.
Thank you. The next initiative is more of an intangible initiative, but it is around cross-departmental collaboration. What we heard through the current state was that frontline staff and supervisors at the town sometimes lack the requisite means to communicate upward and across departments and are looking for additional channels for communication and collaboration. And this is really just about carving out time for department heads or departments to come together and to share what it is they're working on. This can lead to opportunities to join forces to improve a process or to deliver a service. And it really is just really fundamentally a matter of leadership carving out the time to make sure something like this happens. It's also a great way for staff to provide their feedback and feel included in the process and feel like their contributions in terms of how services may be, the delivery of services may be improved. Providing them a forum to provide that and to see how their advice is received and implemented. It will help facilitate that two-way communication. There's also room, little intangible things like lunch and learns, newsletters, those types of things are also a great way of helping, everybody within the organization understand all the outstanding work that is happening across the organization. And what you'll find is in this environment, people want to know and want to understand and what's going on elsewhere in the organization. Early on in this process, we did a kind of a cross-departmental workshop as part of the current state process, and it was real value for the people from across the town that participate in it, because they don't often get a time to really hear and learn what their colleagues are doing in other departments, what they're responsible for, how things work, where there may be opportunities to work together to improve service. Impact analysis, this can have a positive impact, certainly through greater engagement and also through generating and supporting a continuous improvement culture. The investment is little. It really is just about carving out the time to make this happen. The risk is low, and in terms of timeline, this is something that can start tomorrow. In terms of implementation, this is about Chris and his team assigning internal responsibility to make sure that these things happen. It's about understanding in greater detail the information that frontline staff want to both receive and relay to leadership of their departments and leadership of the organization as a whole. And, it's about, you'll need to actively engage with frontline staff to ensure that the meeting design and structure reflects their needs and wants, and that people feel like it's a good and productive use of their time and not a waste of their time. So this one's fairly straightforward, and just, good hygiene in our view. And Your Worship, I'll stop there to see if there are any comments or questions on this.
I'll make a comment on that, Chris. I think we do a pretty good job on this one here. So I'll leave it up to council. Councillor Bjorkman, go ahead.
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. This is something we've talked about before, in integrating different groups together. In our organization, we have skip level meetings, we call them, and where you'll have a director, instead of speaking to the person that's their direct report, you speak to the person that's their direct report. So you've got frontline workers taking some time and meeting with directors, and not necessarily from your department. Sometimes you meet with the director from another department. It would be a very free-flowing conversation. There might be some news that the director is cascading to the employees. That's just not one-on-one. Sometimes it's a group that are there, and it creates that feeling that you are speaking with upper management. You do have a voice in what's happening in your organization. It's been a very good morale builder for ours. So I think it's really a great idea.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Malash, go ahead.
Thank you, through you, Your Worship. I can't see anything on my screen, but let's see. Oh, now I can. But I know that maybe from our perspective as being someone on council, we see that there's good communication, but we primarily deal with directors. But I think this was the directive of interviews that Chris and his team did with staff members. And this is something that staff believes is not being done on a regular basis, that they believe that we can do better as a corporation, that they're looking for an opportunity. Some of the managers or below managers that work for us are saying they don't get enough opportunity to talk to other departments to find out what's going on and communicate different projects and so on. And they're feeling that there should be better communication at that level. So I do believe that there's good communication, but again, it probably comes from being so lean with our staff that there's not a lot of time to do the extras, is what I'm guessing. But regardless of the way we see it, from our view that we have as a council, this is something that staff has been interviewed by our consultant, and they're saying that this is something they'd like to see more of. They think that they can work, we can have a better work environment by making this happen. Is that correct, Chris?
That is correct. Yep.
Okay.
And it's not unusual, Deputy Mayor. It happens in our own organization. We as principals think, oh, how didn't they notice it, right? Like we always talk about it. And it doesn't always, filter through to the front line. And you wouldn't be surprised the number of service delivery reviews where we hear the exact same thing, and management says, "Well, I thought we were doing a good job at it." You may very well be doing a good job at it, but there's always room for improvement, and not everybody it seems to be getting the message. So you have to be responsive to that. So it's not a criticism; it's just to say, that communication is an art, and it's something that you continuously work on. And here, the other dynamic, Deputy Mayor, on this is it's not just communications within your verticals, it's about communication across your verticals, helping people understand what's going on in the broader corporation so they feel more part of the corporate team, so to speak.
Thank you. Always room for improvement. Thanks.
Anybody else from council? Okay, Chris, I guess we can continue.
And then the final opportunity in this section that we looked at is around standard operating procedures. So it's a bit hit and miss within the organization where you actually have standard operating procedures written down. We believe that one of the things that you should be doing is putting in place a process to make sure that standard operating procedures in all departments are actually written down, codified. You use that as the basis for training staff, for reviewing your processes and improving those processes. You use it for the purposes of onboarding new staff. Many municipalities, their standard operating procedures exist in the mind of somebody who has worked there, and the operating procedure is the way I've always done it. But particularly as we move towards looking at, parts of the workforce that are looking to retire, parts of the workforce that are turning over more frequently, and just, having consistency over time in how services are delivered, being able to codify those is going to be important. And so, doing that is something that we're recommending. What we would say is, again, you don't have to do this all overnight, but, departments, as they're looking at their annual plans, as they're thinking about how they continuously improve their operations, they should be stopping to say, how do we do this? Is that written down? And if it's not, how are we going to get that written down so that if I leave, we leave the organization or we have to bring somebody new on into the department, it's easy enough to train them, and there's a consistency in service quality that is delivered to residents. And so from an impact perspective, this is good for service delivery. This is particularly service delivery over time and a consistency in terms of what end users can expect. The investment is really about time and effort of staff to translate what they do into on paper, and sharing that. The risk is fairly low. It really is, into the minutia of how the organization runs the operation. But it is important for a continuous improvement and making sure that you're managing risks associated with the services that you deliver. In terms of timelines, again, not overnight. This is something that there should be an evergreening process around this, and putting it on some sort of multi-year cadence where we're looking at our standard operating procedures, not all at once, but we're looking at a few at a time, a year over time, is certainly what we would suggest in terms of how to most effectively implement this. So in terms of this, how do you implement? Well, as part of the current state, we did fairly detailed service profiles for each of the services that the departments deliver. You can use that as the basis for looking at what it is you do and where that's codified and where you need to codify it. So build on that product that you've paid for and you had us do through this service delivery review process. Integrate this process into the departmental annual planning process. Again, a few at a time, consistent evergreening over time. And once they're in place, make sure as part of that evergreening process, you're putting a standard operating procedure on a review cycle, so that you're always driving towards that continuous improvement in how you deliver services. So, Your Worship, I'll stop there to see if there are any questions.
Council, any questions? Nothing again, Chris. You can continue.
Thank you, Your Worship. So the next set of opportunities are enterprise-wide opportunities around service delivery. And there are 3 opportunities here. The first one is around assessing opportunities for new and upgraded facilities, which we identified in our current state, which includes a new town hall, and we'll talk about that in a moment. The second opportunity is around reviewing the current complement of clerks to optimize efficiencies and consider increased centralization and generalization of that function within the organization. And then the third opportunity is around establishing clear service levels for all services that are delivered by the organization. It is also, to an extent, a corollary of the standard operating procedures initiative that I just described. In terms of the impact, again, mostly around productivity savings in the vein of continuous improvement for this section of, for this bucket of opportunities. So, one of the things that, that we noticed at the current state around, there was some concern about existing municipal facilities, particularly town hall, and whether or not new assets were required, and what opportunities are inherent in having new assets, particularly being able to consolidate some of the footprint. There are capacity issues. There are concerns about staff being split up across multiple different sites. There are concerns about, and we also heard the converse in terms of, it's a big geography and people being able to access services more locally as opposed to having to come into the town directly. But the town has done some things like taking advantage of the county council chambers as a way of dealing with some of the space pressures that it has. Where we landed on this was, we're not going to recommend right now that you need a new town hall. We think there are certain conditions precedent to think through before you make this decision. The first is, you do need to refresh the study that was done a couple of years ago, and that should include a more comprehensive feasibility analysis that includes a quantification of the potential cost efficiencies and wellness and other benefits from consolidating municipal operations into a new town hall. We found that the study from a couple of years ago is lacking. It tells you what it's going to cost to build a building. It talks qualitatively towards some of the benefits of having a new building, but we really think a more comprehensive cost benefit analysis would be warranted before council makes a decision around what new assets it may need. The second piece, and it's also fundamentally related to a new town hall and how big or how small, or whether or not you continue to have a distributed footprint or you have a consolidated footprint, is developing an accommodation policy that examines the space and functional needs of staff and residents. And this should inform, an optimal physical and geographic distribution of the town's office footprint within the county. So it's taking into the needs of what staff need to do their jobs and to deliver the services that they need. It also takes into consideration the needs of residents and where they want to access services and where they're prepared to travel to be able to access town services. The need for these frameworks is exemplified by the infrastructure department. Their staff are spread across 4 buildings. Their fleet is currently stored in 2 locations. There's some question as to whether or not that is optimized. The other thing too is, when we get to the clerk position, and what we've noticed in some of, we have another client that just recently consolidated their footprint. They were actually able to rationalize the number of clerks that they were using, and through attrition and redeploying that capacity to other needs that the organization may have had. all we're saying here is you need to take a more critical look at this. You also need to marry it with an accommodation policy that will really dictate the functional requirements you need any facilities to deliver for you. From an impact analysis, whether you move to a consolidated footprint, we think that if there is a new town hall, certainly that there will be improvements, certainly in staff satisfaction, engagement. We heard through the interviews that the accommodations ain't great, and that does have an impact on people's productivity. It will require an investment to refresh that study and to develop an accommodation policy. We're estimating about $150,000 to undertake such a study. But when you're talking an investment in the millions, tens of millions of dollars, it is something that is a necessary evil. From a risk perspective, the town's going to have to manage, expectations, perceptions around moving staff, shutting down facilities, what it means for workflows, those types of things. Hence why you need to look at both the functions that need to be housed and also what the cost benefit of pursuing that is going to be. From an implementation perspective, updating that feasibility analysis, really trying to quantify what the true cost benefit of pursuing new space and capacity is. Prioritizing, out of that study, prioritizing what needs to happen to your office footprint coming out of that, working, with council and stakeholders to identify potential areas for a new consolidated town hall, if that's the direction you ultimately decide to go in. So, Your Worship, I'll stop there to answer any questions that council may have.
Any questions from council? No questions, Chris?
Okay. Thank you, Your Worship. The next opportunity is around the clerk and the administrative support model in the municipality. What we heard at the current state is that there is excess capacity across the administrative and clerk resources, and a resourcing review could reveal efficiencies. There are currently just under 12 FTE resources who play an administrative clerk or assistant role within the organization. This is in line with peers, but always want to be mindful of whether or not that capacity is being optimally deployed. It was also noted that clerks are specialized. There are certain clerks that are very specialized in their role, which can actually limit the looking at that pool of capacity and being able to deploy it where there are needs. It can actually restrict your ability to do that. And we also noticed that the mayor and the CAO would benefit from additional administrative support to help them manage their workloads. So the recommendation here is that the town review its complement of clerks and administrative assistants to look to optimize the use of that capacity. The town should move to one full-time fire clerk as opposed to a half clerk, which would bring it in line with other divisions who have a clerk. Over the medium term, you could look at sharing an FTE between the CAO and mayor. That should be considered to help deal with the workload pressures that they have. And then the town should consider looking at a more generalized model for your clerks, so that all clerks have a common skill set that can be deployed where needed, so that you're optimizing the use of the capacity that you have in that stable of staff within the enterprise. And that the town might consider a shift from decentralized admin model to a more centralized one, working that group as a pool. That will, could also be aided in terms of whatever, if you do decide to consolidate your office footprint and bringing various clerks and departments in under one roof, that can oftentimes, reduce the need for administrative support, because you're able to share it by being physically co-located and redeploying that capacity elsewhere. In terms of the impact of this, working it as a pool can allow you to better use those resources, which can enhance service. There is an investment, but factoring this the study in how to optimize the use of this pool of talent is something that should be part of the HR strategy that is developed. It's fairly low risk in terms of looking at it. This is fairly internal to the organization. And the timelines are, longer. This is not something that you're going to do overnight. It needs to be well considered in terms of the overall HR strategy for the municipality, and also what may happen in terms of what you do with your office footprint. Overall, the town, to implement this, identify the potential areas, how you generalize that skill set, how you deploy that skill set more effectively. As we noted, there are some areas where we're going to be asking admin staff or clerk staff to use more of the IT tools that are available to them and training them up on that, and further investigate the workloads of the admin assistants to determine the resourcing requirements and whether or not you're using the capacity, optimally using the capacity that you have in that stable of talent. So I'll stop there, Your Worship, to answer questions on this.
Any questions from council? Councillor Bjorken, go ahead.
Thank you, Your Worship. Yeah, I think I take an opposite view of what you're presenting here to us. I think we actually need specialized clerks here. Part of running lean, again, is having people who know the product that they're dealing with, know the department they're dealing with, probably as well as some of their leaders. And what you're describing almost sounds like a secretarial pool. That, I remember from the past, as you went through, you would, okay, I need a secretary today, I need a clerk today to take care of these issues. Whereas, again, running lean as we do, the clerk knows as much about the department that they're in as anybody else in that department. So I think I understand what you're saying as far as being able to spread the asset, but I think, again, the way we run, I don't know if that really suits here. My opinion. Thanks.
I think that's a fair criticism, Councillor, because the other way to look at it too is you do have specialized clerks. Is there capacity within that talent pool to create some redundancy, so to cross-train some people, so that if that clerk leaves, or if that clerk needs to take a vacation, or that clerk gets sick, there is somebody to fill in, and so you don't have stranded capacity as well. So that's another way to look at it as well. But it's a fair criticism.
Thank you. Anybody else from council? No, go ahead, Chris, you can continue.
Thank you, Your Worship. The next initiative is around codifying service levels and being very explicit about what the service levels are. What we found through the current state is that service level standards vary from department to department and can often vary from staff to staff. When we were doing our interviews and doing our survey, a picture emerged that service level standards are limited in scope, not communicated to staff or enforced. As a result, response times and constituent experience can vary depending on it. And this is separate from the customer service kind of high level, like when an inquiry comes in, how long does it take to respond? How long should it take to resolve certain issues? What are the steps in the process that you can expect? This is, a specific service, from snow clearing all the way through to rec programming. What are the service levels that we're providing? Most municipalities, they talk a lot about service levels, but when we go in, they're actually not on paper. So you have to deduce them from either, budget levels that are there, or, figure out, whether you're delivering at standard prescribed by legislation or over delivering based on the minimum standard prescribed in legislation. What we're saying here is that we help build the service profiles through the current state report, leverage that look to codify your service levels so that everybody understands what those are, and you are more eyes wide open when it comes to making decisions about where you're going to invest your resources in budget processes to understand what the impact may be. If you're putting more money to that to a program, does that, what is the service level we're delivering? To what service level are we delivering? We put more money into it. Will that increase the service level? Will that maintain the service level? Where we have to make some tough choices. What is the service level? What impact is that going to have on the service level? And again, this is not something that can be done overnight. It's going to, again, it has to be an evergreening process, kind of similar to what we talked about with the standard operating procedures. But being leading class in terms of, when we say service levels, I can point to where that service level is written and how that service level is delivered against is what we're trying to push you towards with this recommendation. What we're suggesting is that, you update the service levels, put it on a 5-year time horizon to do that and update, and then, re-examining those service levels based on some sort of prioritization on a go-forward basis, so that you're building in as part of a continuous improvement process, over time. This will require some investment of time to actually codify it, much like with standard operating procedures, but it will have benefits in terms of the decisions you've got to make around the council table, particularly around trade-offs. Will also help with staff training. It will also help with managing citizen expectations around the services that are being delivered by the municipality. So with that, Your Worship, I'll stop to answer any questions council may have.
Once again, council, any questions? No questions, Chris.
Great. Thank you. So the next section of the report looks at specific departmental opportunities. And we're going to start with the Office of the Chief Administrative Officer. We found 2 opportunities here. I will touch on them fairly quickly. The first opportunity is just monitoring police service levels through, constantly engaging with the community in terms of their perceptions and their views on the level of service that is being provided. The second is around exploring and assessing, an optimal dividend strategy, particularly maybe looking at whether or not ELK Energy can be made more efficient to drive more of a return for the municipality. In terms of police service levels, we've heard, and I think we had some discussion at the current state around some concerns of residents about the level of service that you're currently receiving from the OPP, the quality of the response times, the presence in the community of the OPP, and a desire to make sure that Essex continues to be the safe community that it is. It's an interesting environment in which you operate, and basically this recommendation boils down to keeping tabs on the service levels, making sure that you're engaging with the OPP around concerns with respect to service levels, and keep an eye on what's happening in your neighboring municipalities. You're almost a bit of you've got a lot of experimentation going on in your own backyard. You can look at the other models that other municipalities are pursuing and determine whether or not the current model, you contrast it against your current model to determine if your current model can be improved, or if it's perhaps a model that you need, or perhaps something you need to look at a new model to pursue. So just keep your finger on the pulse there. Use the learnings to, when the next time your contract comes up with the OPP, to be more exacting in terms of defining the service levels that you're requiring of them, and in trying to enshrine that into your agreements into your agreement that you have with the OPP. I'll stop there, Your Worship. Answer any questions.
Any questions on this one here? No questions.
Thank you. The second opportunity is around ELK Energy. The issue of hydro LDC consolidation comes up, it seems like, once every 4 years or once every 5 years. For a lot of municipalities, these are very important assets, not just in terms of the reliable electricity that they provide to residents, but they are also a source of dividend income that helps offset pressure on the property tax base and is money that is invested in municipal services. So we heard this, we identified this, in looking closer at it, what we noticed is that, the corporation is a comparatively efficient LDC and has achieved a return on equity higher than what is deemed in rates, as indicated by the most recent OEB scorecard. We believe that, what you should do as a shareholder is look and ask the board to undertake a service delivery review process for the utility itself to see whether or not there are opportunities to achieve greater cost savings that could benefit both ratepayers, but also benefit you as a shareholder of the corporation. The project itself, the service delivery review project, should extend beyond a reassessment of the synergies and cost savings that might be achieved with a merger. It should look to include, as an alternative to a merger, an assessment of any savings that might be achieved through shared services, either with the municipality itself or with others, whether or not there are outsourcing opportunities to drive greater efficiency, or whether or not, based on real estate holdings, whether or not there's some rationalization that can happen in the real estate portfolio of the company. In terms of the impact analysis, there's a potential, if there are indeed efficiencies to be achieved, the benefits for ratepayers and certainly benefits for you as the shareholder. This will require not a direct investment by the town, but will require an investment by the corporation to undertake such a review. This is a higher risk initiative from our perspective, as you are a shareholder and you can ask for certain things to be done, but it does involve an external organization that may not see the value or may dispute the value of undertaking such an initiative. And this, from our perspective, would be a multi-year initiative. In terms of implementation, you can't direct them or force them to do anything, but it's about talking to the board and exploring this opportunity with the board, and having the board scope and procure and work with the organization to implement something that will ideally say that it's as efficient an organization as it possibly can be, or there are efficiencies that can be pursued for the benefit of both ratepayers and the shareholder. So with that, Your Worship, I'll stop there and answer any questions that council may have.
Thank you. Councillor Bondi.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, through you to our consultants. I agree that this is probably a multi-year file. I doubt that with the current ELK board makeup, we'll get any traction with this issue. But there's definitely a lot of questions there around ELK. They were supposed to come to our council, and I'm not even sure when that's coming. Getting them to even come back to council for a little bit more in depth of a Q&A seems a little bit challenging. But yeah, I do have a lot of questions around asset management. They do seem to be doing a really good job paying off debt, but I really think that if we, there may be benefit in merging with another LDC. I don't know. I'd like to have that conversation for sure. So I would like to just thank you for highlighting it, and through you to our CAO. Does our CAO know when we're meeting with ELK?
Through your worship, we're working on it. Trying to work through the presentations with the Director of Customer Relations to ensure that the meeting is pertinent and applicable, and that the FAQs that I hear from council are answered, and out front. So it's been some back and forth. I do have some information from them, so I don't have a defined date yet, but I guess it's being worked on. It's not being shelved, it's being worked on.
Thank you, Chris. Anybody else? Nobody else? Okay, Chris, you can continue.
Thank you, Your Worship. The next departmental specific opportunity is with respect to community services. And the opportunity here is to evaluate the placement of facilities within parks and facilities and consider whether a separate facilities division is required to provide services to multiple departments, or the development of a whole of organization facilities plan that can identify opportunities for internal shared resources and more efficient use of the facilities function. This again lends itself to light green dollars productivity improvements. What we came to understand through the current state is that facilities can currently provide services across departments within the corporation. And it's currently located where it's currently located within the organizational structure. Facilities is siloed from other divisions, which is a result of those divisions not realizing some of the potential benefits of the whole of enterprise support that the facilities service provides to the corporation. The recommendation here is, more a medium-term opportunity, is looking at whether or not facilities is properly placed, where it currently is. Or whether or not there's an opportunity to explore moving facilities from community services to become a standalone division of its own, and whether or not that would make a difference in terms of the services it provides to facilities across the corporation. This would include reviewing, conducting a review specific to the facilities functions to determine if an alternative organizational structure makes sense. And in fact leads to better use of the facility services at the end of the day. This is very inside baseball, but it was a concern that was raised with us, and it really is on management to assess whether or not they're getting full use of the capacity that exists in facilities by having it be a unit within the community services division, or whether or not as a standalone division, it will be more widely used as the enterprise service that it is. So I'll stop there, Your Worship, to answer any questions.
Pretty straightforward. Does one any questions? No questions, Chris. You can continue.
The next is around corporate services, departmental specific opportunities here. There are 3 opportunities that we've identified. One is to look at whether or not moving the human resources function from corporate services to the CAO's office makes sense, particularly given our recommendations around an HR strategy and plan, and having it be an enterprise, more of an enterprise. It is an enterprise function, but having it reside at the level of the CAO. The second is around continuing to work to augment budget training across departments, and I'll explain a little bit about what we mean there. The third opportunity is around developing an organization-wide IT strategy, training in infrastructure strategy. As service expectations and the increasing use of IT factors into municipal service delivery. Again, most of these lend themselves to productivity improvements. In terms of where human resources resides within the organization, what we heard through the current state is that, because of the confidential nature of human resources, there's a sentiment that was raised by management and some staff as to whether or not this would be better housed in the CAO's office to allow for a more direct reporting relationship between the manager of HR and the CAO. A recent organizational review recommended that HR be moved from the CAO's office and into corporate services. So whether or not to go back on that recommendation and put it back in the CAO's office is what we're looking at. It was noted that because HR is an enterprise-wide function, its placement in another department can cause some inefficiencies due to the often confidential nature of the subject matter. And that subject matter may be the person you directly report to. What we're recommending here is that you look at moving human resources to the CAO's office, and be very clear about where it resides in the organization. Putting it at the level of the CAO and strengthening that relationship is certainly, I view the HR strategy as very strategically important from the CAO's perspective, from council's perspective. Closer working relationship may make more sense. It may free it up from it to be, a whole of enterprise offering, and work more closely with the CAO around setting the strategic direction for the organization and streamlining the organization. There is always an inherent tension between HR and financial reporting relationships. So, those are the two primary functions that exist within a corporate services division. And so having it outside of that and allowing the CAO to balance the demands of HR with the demands of the finance function in terms of the budget of the place may make more sense. And so this is, again, more inside baseball. Where does it make sense strategically within the organization? From an implementation perspective, for me, it's about, does the CAO have the capacity to oversee this service? There will be a bit of change management that goes with moving it into the CAO's office. It'd have to be very clear to the entire organization why the reporting relationship is changing. There's no silver bullet around this. Many different organizations, some have it reporting directly through the CAO. Many others have it in a corporate services division. From our perspective, it really is a function of the CAO's span of control, and whether, given some of the recommendations we're recommending around HR strategy, it may make sense to put it back in the CAO's office, given the strategically important work that has to be done. I'll stop there, Your Worship, answer any questions.
Any questions from council on this one? No, seeing none. Chris, you can move on.
Thank you. In terms of budget training, what we heard through the consultation process, and again, this is not something that is specific. It's something that we see in other municipalities as well. Is finance has responsibility for producing the budget, but finance is reliant on the departments to give it the inputs to create the budget and bring it to council. This is about increasing internal training from finance to its colleagues in the other divisions to support them in how they support the budget process, supporting them with templates and training in terms of making the internal process of building a budget more efficient, and freeing up finance staff time by ensuring a smoother working relationship with the departments. This is in terms of the benefits of this initiative. It can serve to increase budgetary accuracy, certainly reduce the cycle times if everybody's on the same page and understands how what they need to input into the process and how they need to input into the process. Some of the challenges, obviously, there may be resistance to having to change the way they've always done it. There is also finance staff capacity to actually provide the training and articulate to the departments what they need out of them to build the budget. But we think overall, this is good hygiene. This is good practice. Finance is responsible for building the budget, but it's a whole of enterprise responsibility to build a budget and to bring that before council for a decision. And so moving in this direction and carving out the time will, in the short term, create some issues around change, but over the long term, make the budget process more efficient and effective overall. So I'll stop there, Your Worship, to see if there are any questions on this one.
Any questions on this one here? Deputy Mayor Meloche, go ahead.
Would it be possible to get Mr. Morrison to give a comment on this? I'm just curious on his perspective.
Sure would be. Jeff, are you there? Go ahead.
Yep. Through the chair. Yeah, I agree with some of the points. We've worked to evolve the budget and make it a lot more inclusive. So I agree with the points there that, yeah, we are continuing to evolve and train. As you're aware, we've had a manager who was off on maternity leave last year. We have an assistant manager who was off on medical leave this year. So we've had some holes to fill. So we're continually trying to train and roll that out. COVID threw us for a loop also with it as it pertains to where we want to be with that training. But yeah, no, I agree. There's efficiencies within our system that we use, Questica specifically, where I think additional training could benefit the organization significantly.
Okay, thank you.
Yep, you're welcome.
Anybody else in council? No? Go ahead, Chris.
Thank you, Your Worship. The third opportunity is around IT and, sorry, just trying to move the boxes here on my screen. IT training and infrastructure strategy. What we learned through the current state is that, staff have a lack of understanding what IT tools are available to them. And then that obviously we have identified the need for training on the tools that are available and getting people to get the most out of the software and tools that you do have. In addition, IT could be a shared service. Your colleague municipalities in the county have IT needs as well. That could be shared as a way of kind of ensuring that you all have the capabilities and you're spreading some of the costs. In terms of the initiative here, it's about developing an organization-wide IT training and infrastructure strategy that is developed to help ensure continuous improvement in the IT systems and tools to streamline the organization, being more proactive in your outlook about the systems and requirements that you are going to have and whether or not those are inherent in the systems you currently have today or whether or not you're going to have to bring in new systems. May also consider opportunities to improve service delivery by outsourcing or sharing IT delivery with neighboring municipalities or having that as a service that may be made available through the county. There's also an opportunity to, look at, so that's all related to the economies of scale. And there are a couple models out there where municipalities have entered into agreements with either their upper tier government or they've entered into agreements with other governments to make IT a shared service so that they have the HR capacity to support them, and they're also leveraging their buying power around the various systems that they have in common that they need and going to market and bringing those in-house and splitting some of the costs. So with this is a longer term initiative in our view. You have a fairly good handle on what you have and what more you can get out of it. But as IT becomes and the digitization of municipal services becomes more pronounced over the long term, you need to be more proactive in how you're going to get the systems and the support for those systems that you need. If you can afford to do it on your own, that's one option. If it's something where you do need to, you want the capacity, but you can't afford to have it fully internal to the town, look at opportunities to share this with others that may have capacity to bring to you, or creating a shared services arrangement that makes sense. And so this initiative is about looking forward, Your Worship, and I'll stop there to answer any questions.
Any questions from council? Once again, Chris, there's no questions. Go ahead.
Thank you, Your Worship. The next opportunity is in infrastructure services, and this is the opportunity here is to update condition assessment ratings and tools to rate conditions and collaborate with finance to continue maintenance of the asset management policy that ties to the town's reserve policy. So that is a mouthful. All of that is to say that becoming more progressing your asset management capabilities, building an asset management plan that is based on actual asset data, actual condition of those assets, and having a kind of a more mature asset management policy and approach can definitely is a better way to manage risks around your assets and also yield some efficiencies and savings over time, and allow you to better plan and manage and budget for the investments that you need to make, not only in current assets but in new assets. The benefit of this, given the significant assets that you do have as a municipality, is the ability to prioritize and categorize based on data and integrate that into the maintenance and capital project budgeting process, and being more disciplined around what gets invested in when, based on clear criteria that is set out in policy. One of the challenges always is maintaining the inventory and maintaining the asset information, maintaining that and keeping it current. There may be technical capabilities in data collection issues, but those are things that you can invest in over time to get a handle on what is a substantial financial asset and obligation of the municipality. So in terms of what the town needs to do here, it's about taking a comprehensive inventory of the facility, the facilities and the equipment that you have, really understanding the condition of each. You're not always, some of the stuff is buried. So, it's not, you have to estimate condition based on the age of the asset and how it's performing. Updating to ensure that asset management provides the most accurate and pertinent information to inform decision-making around how scarce capital investments, capital resources, or capital dollars are invested in the assets. Taking a more risk-based approach to asset management as a way of making sure that you're meeting your obligations, keeping your assets in good condition, and mitigating the risks to your tax base. Any questions on that, Your Worship?
Council, any questions on this one? No, go ahead. Oh, sorry, I'm sorry. We do. Councillor Bjorkman, go ahead.
Just a quick comment. Earlier, page 5 there, our asset management life cycle reserve was, commended for how far ahead we are of our comparator communities and the great job that's happening. So we don't want to lose that. There's improvement. There's always continuous improvement, but that is something that our admin is right on top of, and that's something that we can hang our hats on. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor. Anybody else? Oh, go ahead, Chris.
Your Worship. The next opportunities are in development services. The first opportunity is about modernizing the building division's service model to not only archive dated records, but also to move to electronic services both in the field and in the office. The second opportunity is around exploring cost recovery improvements and potential impacts on key development services. So the second opportunity has an incremental revenue potential for the municipality. In terms of modernizing the building division service model, what we came to understand through the current state is that it's heavy on paper-based applications and hard copy plan drawings that have to be submitted. Inspectors in the field or in their vehicles are not equipped with tablets or laptops, and it's heavily paper-based. We also came to learn that archives are not scanned and searchable, and so there are filing cabinets that are filled with decades of documents. And so, again, getting back to the records management piece we talked about earlier, that makes it quite cumbersome to search for the files that are needed. Or to manage the data that is in those files. So we're suggesting here that you update the service model, move it more to a digitized service model that will improve the efficiency of the service, will improve your ability to archive the data, to be able to retrieve data that's critical to delivering the service. This is an area where many municipalities are making investments in digitizing the service, including making online portals available for applicants to make their applications, provide the required documentation and drawings. And this is something that the town of Essex should be exploring as well. The other interesting thing about building services is it's a fairly well legislated and regulated service, and it doesn't really vary from municipality to municipality. This may be an area where you do look to share this service with other municipalities, and you can share in the cost of modernizing and digitizing the service. You can also share in the building inspectors that are needed to deliver the service. We know from our other work that you all scramble to find chief building officials and building inspectors. There may be an opportunity to collaborate here with municipalities in the neighborhood to provide a better service, and not to have to be competing for the same talent, but leveraging the talent that's available to deliver the service. In terms of implementation, really thinking through what the business process needs to look like, and how you enable that through digitization. And working to find a solution that meets those business requirements, and procuring that and implementing that. This is something that is going to have to happen over a number of years. You're going to have to fully explore, map the business process, match that to the digital tools that are in the marketplace, and make sure you secure the right one. And that will require you to figure out what the costs are, and to build that into the budget into the future. I'll stop there, Your Worship, to answer any questions.
Any questions from council? Deputy Mayor Malash, you're first. Go ahead.
Hello. Yes, through you, Mr. Mayor. Thanks, Chris. And our Director Chadwick was really tickled when she was presenting to us last night when we were having our budget walkthrough, the field and software tablets that are coming forth for that department, with building permits, moving to electronic, and reading in your report earlier this morning helps make the commitment to $32,000 a year for this program more palatable. So I just wanted to draw that to your attention. The staff's already in the works, and it's made it to this year's budget.
That's great to hear. Thank you, Councillor.
Deputy Mayor Malash, you were next. Go ahead.
Thank you, through you, Your Worship. We've got to kind of mention the same thing, but also to take it a step further, that maybe there is some collaboration that we can look at with other municipalities. It might be worthwhile talking, just to see if there's a way of creating a pool of building inspectors across the county that it would have to be like a separate department entirely, and build back to each individual community, but based on hours being kept track of, etc. But there's potential for something like that to happen. And I'd be curious to know in other municipalities, larger municipalities, if they've done this collaboration, and whether it actually was a cost savings. I can see where maybe it would be a cost savings of 1 or 2 building inspectors, but the overall department itself, I'm having a hard time figuring out where the true savings would be driven from. So, but it's absolutely something we can explore, and maybe through the county, like maybe the county be the one that has the pool of building inspectors, and they're responsible for building it out to the various communities. I don't think the county's interested in taking that on, but they're basically take direction from all of the mayors and deputy mayors that are in the county. And if that's something that we want to push for as municipalities, then it's something that the county has to take on. Thanks.
Thank
Thank you,
you,
Deputy Mayor.
Councillor Vanendel.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, thank you. Through you, I want to expand on what the Deputy Mayor just said. I worked for an industry that decided to digitize in the early 80s, and we had records going back to the 1880s. And we didn't digitize everything going back. We just started to digitize in 1984. And I think it would be a big waste of money if we decided to digitize going backwards. Or digitize going forwards, fine. But until there's a cost estimate on going backwards, I think that would be a big mistake. There has to be a line in the sand. Okay, now we've changed it. We're going forward. But I think going backwards would just be a make work and a make cost project. The estimates, I don't think that would work. Thanks.
Thank you. Anybody else from council? Nobody else? Okay, Chris, you can continue.
Your worship. Development cost recovery improvement opportunities. What we learned through the current state is that Essex has the lowest share of revenue from development charges in comparison to the peers. Upon our preliminary analysis at the time, is seeing lower cost recovery on bylaw enforcement and planning. We understood that council waived development charge fees for industrial, commercial, and institutional developments, as well as a portion of residential developments. But in our view, it might be worth revisiting this decision and assess its impact and benefits to date, because the costs associated with servicing that development don't fall on the end user, so to speak. They fall on the property tax base. In that the town may benefit from reviewing adjusting fees related to development services going forward. So the recommendation here is to look at cost recovery improvements and potential impacts on key development services. For development charges, a 23 AMO report on the subject concluded that based on a review of the literature, investigating how firms make locational business decisions isn't really predicated on development charges. There are other things that influences development charges are just one of them. It does appear that non-residential DCs, or does not appear that non-residential development charges are a barrier to economic development. So in that context, I think it's worth a review of the policy decisions that have been made. In addition, the town should reevaluate planning fees to ensure that they are including all costs associated with the delivery of the planning services, and that they're recovering those fees recovering those costs through the fees, and not requiring the property tax base to subsidize that service offering. And so, we have identified that there is an opportunity to, increase the recovery of costs through the fees, which takes some of the pressure off of the tax base. But this is really, putting in, our recommendation fundamentally here is, looking at whether or not it makes sense to reintroduce development charges to cover to ensure that you're recouping money to pay for the growth that is happening. And looking at your fees and making sure that your fees are set in a way to recover costs, and wherever you are making decisions to set fees that below cost recovery, that you understand what the impact is on the property tax base, and whether or not that trade-off makes sense for the municipality. And looking at potentially some increased fee recovery related to bylaw staff and the work that they're doing. So, Your Worship, I'll stop there and answer any questions that council may have.
Questions from council? No, but Chris, I could just add one thing, that development charges, we did away with them in one ward, Ward 4. And the only reason we did away with them was to stimulate growth there. There was zero growth there. And now we have some substantial growth happening. And we are going to reinstate the development fees.
Great.
There. And the growth that we're having, you got to look at it offset the development fees with the tax return too. So
Yep.
in long term, I think we'll benefit from the zero development fees in Ward 4. But we are, like I say, we are reinstating them. So,
Okay.
any other Deputy Mayor Meloche, go ahead.
Thank you. I just want to tell the rest of council, I just recently had a chat with Director Lori Chadwick, and we just general conversation about the entire department. And she is looking currently at all their charges for various plans of subdivision, like whatever her department does as far as charging development charges. In that sense, recouping the costs. She's relooking at all of those items right now. And I believe in early 2021, we're going to be seeing some kind of plan come back from her, from what I understood.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. And if I can just add, I think development charges in town of Essex are very low compared to the other municipalities. I'm not mistaken there. Am I correct on that, Chris? You must have did some comparisons there. Have you did comparisons with the adjacent municipalities on development charges?
We did, and it was in the current state report, Your Worship. I don't have it at my fingertips at the moment.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure we're pretty low, but if not the
Yeah.
lowest. Okay, thank you.
If I can just add, Your Worship, if I can jump in, if that's okay?
Go ahead.
Yeah, I just want to add, I think, Jeff highlighted in our budget discussions last night that we did absorb, 400 grand plus or minus in this year's budget, or in 2021's proposed budget on development charges. So although yes, low and all that, there's the arguments on both sides of the coin in terms of, yes, it brings development and yes, there's property taxes. There's a component that has to be absorbed. And items like something like Victor Street that's in your budget would normally be in a development charge. But your general taxpayers are paying for that now. So it's a tough one, I know. I just want to make sure, I draw that you did absorb 400 grand in this current year budget, and with more growth and more waiving, you guys have to, I guess, play with that balance. So, thanks.
Thanks, Chris. Anybody else? Okay, Chris, you can go ahead and continue.
Thank you, Your Worship. The next set of opportunities around our exploration around what cost savings can be achieved with looking at shared services opportunities. There are two here with respect to collaborative purchasing. One is around increasing your use of collaborative purchasing organizations as a way of being more efficient in your spend on goods and services. The second is around assessing the feasibility of sharing fleet and expensive equipment, both across departments and perhaps across with other neighboring municipalities. And we'll explore that in just a moment. But both of these have the potential to generate significant savings for the municipality, and it's something that a lot of municipalities are pursuing. So with respect to the first one, in your 2019 budget, $2.5 million was spent on materials and supplies. When you with each local municipality purchasing supplies, equipment, and other assets individually, efforts are duplicated, costs can grow, or you're not necessarily being able to achieve the bulk purchasing power that you would otherwise get by going to market together with others. There's also issues around, various things in terms of their usage and their requirements change from year to year. And so can you smooth out some of those effects? The recommendation here is that the town increase participation in collaborative purchasing organizations that offer procurement support and expertise to facilitate joint purchasing and purchasing at a greater scale to drive better value for money in your purchase. Municipalities have done this in a couple of ways. One is they've actually set up purchasing cooperatives amongst themselves and with other broader public sector entities, and they go to market for common goods and services through those purchasing collaboratives. There are also established purchasing collaboratives both through the Ontario Public Buyers Association, the Ontario Education Marketplace Collaborative, the Supply Chain Ontario. The Ontario government's creating a new Crown agency responsible for procurement, but there's also the LAS service offering through the Association of Municipalities of Ontario. So there are already existing vehicles that it's just a matter of plugging into those and looking at the contracts they have and figuring out what commodities or services that you want to take advantage of those contracts for, as a way of getting more, as a way of stretching the dollars that you do set aside to purchase materials and to purchase supplies and services. So from this perspective, it may be worthwhile looking at and collaborating with neighboring municipalities to determine if you want to do some sort of purchasing cooperative yourself. Where are those things you're all going to market for? Are they commoditized products? And if so, can you go to market together to better purchase at scale? Looking for plugging into the contracts that are available through the established purchasing organizations is certainly an immediate step that can be taken to try to generate some savings on the spend that you do have in this area. So this is an opportunity to both collaborate with neighboring municipalities or take advantage of existing vehicles that already exist to generate savings. Typically, in our experience and in the sources we consulted, you should be looking at 5 to 10% savings on your spend by participating in collaborative purchasing. And those savings could be more significant depending on the commodity that you're purchasing with colleague municipalities or through these standing organizations. So I'll stop there, Your Worship, to see if there are any questions.
Councillor Gary, go ahead.
Thank you. Through you, Mayor, to Chris. All this sounds really good. I'm just wondering, it could get messy, can it not? I mean, you're talking about municipalities getting together and purchasing things. Who's spearheading that? Who's putting it on their budget to dole out the money up front? How is the other municipalities getting refunded? You're talking about sharing equipment possibility. Does that mean that Essex may have to wait to use a paver because, say, Kingsville's using it, and then after Kingsville's done with it, Leamington's using it? Like, I see some on paper, it looks really good, but I don't see how it's being organized and how it's really working. Now, you're saying there are some municipalities or regions that are doing it. I'd like to look into it a little bit further. Anything that can save us some money is great, but the time spent having people within our organization sit down with other municipalities and figure out what they need in terms of toilet paper and other stuff, I just don't see that working very smoothly. Just looking for, just throwing some feedback in there and looking for some reply to that.
Yeah, so with the organizations that already exist, whether it's OACM, Ontario Buys, or LAS, they've already gone to market. They have standing contracts with suppliers, so it's just a matter of plugging into those organizations and taking advantage of the contracts that they've already negotiated for those commodities. So already they have achieved better pricing because they go to market and are able to commit a certain level of purchasing. So you don't need to go through the process of collaborating with neighbors. You can plug into those opportunities. Right away. A number of municipalities are using LAS through AMO to purchase, everything from salt and gravel through to natural gas. Again, those are things that those contracts are already set up. The price is already set. You can plug into those tomorrow. In terms of looking at where there may be other opportunities to go to market together, one of the areas where it may make sense to collaborate, and it is messy, or can be messy. And this is why this has got to be on a longer term time frame for you to pursue. Is you're going to market in the neighborhood for anything from software that you're all going to commonly use, or roads that need to be paved. Are there opportunities to collaborate and time yourself to market with other with neighboring municipalities to try to get a better unit price, so to speak, for things that you're all going to market for, as opposed to all competing with each other for the kind of the same vendor pool to do those types of things. We think it's worth looking at those things. It would be a heck of a lot easier if you could coordinate some of these things through the county. But if the county's not willing to play ball, where there are opportunities for the town of Essex, as efficiently as you run, where there are bottom line savings to be had, is looking at sharing some of those costs, or reducing some of those costs by doing more things with neighbors, or through existing vehicles like LAS or OECM.
Okay.
Thanks, Chris.
Just to add to that, Councillor Guerin, it's something that we've tried to start already, and you're right. It's not easy when you're dealing with, competing, priorities or scheduling and whatnot. But at the very least, there are roads that we've added to the county's projects. So the county does so many roads, and we've added some of our roads that are of similar nature. When we did North Malden Road, that was actually a part of the county project, and then they just invoiced us for it. But there are things I noticed. We have a grader proposed in our budget. I was looking at Amherstburg's budget; they have a grader. So if really it's your spec sheet for your grader, and you put them out for tender, is there potential that someone buying 2 graders would be cheaper than someone ordering 1? Another thing that comes to mind, bunker gear, right? The city of Windsor buys, tenfold the bunker gear that we all do as the county. They probably get it for a fraction of the price we do, when it's simply just putting those orders in. So I think just having the service delivery review here, Amherstburg's, Leamington's, it's already opened up those lines of communications with other municipalities to start saying, it's not a bad idea. Maybe can we just tack on 30 bunker gears to your tender and just invoice us and we'll pay you. So there's some quick wins on some things, I believe. You're right. Other things become definitely more complicated when you're mucking with construction techniques, or, the things that we want here. But I've just seen those lines of communications open even more. Thanks.
Deputy Mayor?
And we've only talked about purchasing together on physical assets. There's services too that we could, like contracts. And I'm thinking right off the bat, for instance, waste collection. Another one's insurance. If you go to the market with the entire county and the county, every municipality in the county and the county looking for insurance at the same time, that we all have to have it. We all have to go out there and get quotes. If we're doing it as a combined purchase and a service, I think that we'd probably get a much better rate, or maybe go to a different system entirely. Maybe start self insuring, in some instances.
Through your worship, just on that as well. I think garbage for sure, absolutely. Councillor or Deputy Mayor Meloche, phenomenal idea. I think garbage, because garbage is the same, right? You pick your garbage up, whether it's once a week. The level of service is varying. Insurance we talked about, and insurance is more like policing, where you get into, are you paying a premium for someone else's issues in terms of whether they have more claims or more incidences. So, but yeah, some very good ideas there in terms of services.
Yeah, employee benefits, going to market together on purchasing employee benefits, things of that nature. There's a lot of potential in this space.
Good, thank you. Anybody else? Oh, go ahead, Chris.
Thank you, Your Worship. So that's collaborative purchasing, and I think we did touch on the sharing fleet in equipment. And, you may actually share the equipment, or as Chris said, you may just go to market together where, you're all looking to purchase a similar asset as a way of getting greater economies of scale for what you're looking to purchase. The next area is just, some opportunities that we identified and have done some preliminary work. Obviously shared services, shared procurement, regional coordination opportunities all require local municipalities getting together, provide some more refinement, political will to make those things happen. But in terms of regional coordination opportunities, we think there are some opportunities around shared fire services, particularly with respect to fire training. There's opportunity around shared programming, exploring new options to expand programming and purchasing to improve particularly recreation facility utilization, and exploring, which we already touched on, exploring opportunities for regionalizing building inspection services. With respect to regional standard for fire training, what we learned through the current state is that each municipality in the region has different standards for fire training, and multiple municipalities have their own fire trainer on hand. This results in a duplication of effort and personnel, results in additional costs, training time, and a lack of cross-municipal standards. Certainly creates competency risk, that at the end of the day creates risks for the residents who rely on the service. There is an opportunity for the region to look towards a shared fire service, but in the absence of that, there's an opportunity to create a regional standard for fire training and hire one fire trainer for the region to provide that support to the various departments. Now, this, in terms of this will require some investment, but even before you get to the investment, there needs to be agreement and alignment across your colleague municipalities in the county that this is something that they want to do. I think there is an openness in other municipalities to look at this. Shared fire training is something that counties like Elgin County, the county is providing that service to the local tier municipalities, and local tier local municipalities are opting into that training service through the county. So there's definitely precedence in the sector for going this route, and it's something that we think makes a lot of sense and will only contribute to not only reducing some of the costs or sharing some of the costs inherent in this, but actually having everybody rise to a common standard that will only make for a better protective service for residents across the municipalities at the end of the day. Your Worship, I'll stop there to see if there are any questions on fire training.
Questions? No, seeing none, you can go ahead, Chris, continue.
Your Worship. The next opportunity is around shared recreation, utilization, and purchasing. We've raised this, and we know that some of the community organizations are already kind of moving in this direction, like Harrow and Kingsville hockey. Here's what I would say about this. This is one where we propose this in a number of municipalities. We get the most pushback. But the funny thing is that everybody kind of suffers from the same problem, which is an underutilization and therefore an under recovery of costs for the recreation assets that they do have. The problem tends to be outside the prime time hours, but there are only so many prime time hours, and that will never fully fund what the costs are of providing the facilities for use of the community. And I'm not even saying that you should be looking to fully cover those costs through the utilization of the assets, but you can do a better job of recovering a good amount of costs. And that requires, a focus not only from a programming perspective to ensure that you're utilizing or seeking out ways to get facilities utilized in kind of those off-peak periods, but there is probably also an opportunity to collaborate and do more joint programming, or at least coordination of asset availability with neighboring municipalities who are all suffering kind of the same thing in terms of underutilization and the costs that come with underutilization of the assets. And so we have no hard recommendation as to where to start here, other than to say that it makes sense to work with Amherstburg and to work with Kingsville and to work with Leamington and others in the county, to look at the programs, look at where capacity exists, look at what can be done together to fill that capacity and share that capacity across municipalities as a way of not only delivering better programming, but also a better way of beginning to recover more of the costs of delivering those, of providing those facilities from end users versus having a disproportionate amount on the backs of the property tax base. And so we think this is something that's worth looking at. If you can see a modest increase of a utilization in the town's own facilities, there are savings to be had on the property tax base through increased recovery of costs through the fees that are charged to users of those facilities. So this is not something that is going to be done overnight, but it's certainly something worth exploring with neighboring municipalities, all of whom are dealing kind of with the same issues. And they're great assets in your collective backyards, and it'd be good to see them increase their utilization and allow you to recover more through through user fees as opposed to subsidizing it through the property tax base. I'll stop right there, Your Worship, and answer any questions on that.
Any questions from council? No questions, Chris. Go ahead.
Okay. Thank you. I touched on regionalizing building inspection services. I don't know, Your Worship, if I need to go more into that, but there are examples where Lambton utilizes a building service department that coordinates the role for 11 municipalities in the county. Inspection enforcement is pretty heavily regulated. So, much like with garbage, it is a service that it doesn't vary much from municipality to municipality. It's also an opportunity to ensure that instead of competing for the same scarce building inspector resource, that you're sharing the available resources that are available to be hired in the county. Again, something like this does require, you can't just jump to it tomorrow. It does require the participation of other municipalities. And so setting up that conversation and exploring this as an opportunity where you can coordinate at least on the person power that is needed to deliver the service, and maybe over time looking at a more deeply integrated service, given it's a fairly standard service the way it's regulated. From our perspective, makes sense at this point.
Yeah, we covered that pretty good.
Yeah. Okay.
Any questions? No, seeing none, Chris, you can go ahead, continue.
Just one more opportunity, folks. Corporate services. We're just putting this, GIS delivery was put on our radar screen. It's something that we identified as an opportunity for improvement. The town currently provides its own GIS and mapping services in-house. Your peers do the exact same. And, the other selected peer municipalities receive GIS services from the county. There is, a duplication in effort in GIS systems or GIS systems. And, we think there's a merit in looking at sharing that service and looking at an alternative model to save on costs and still have a high quality service. Northumberland, the GIS is provided through a managed service agreement to the lower tier municipalities by the county. And that encompasses ongoing data collection and map updates, as well as ad hoc updates based on what the local municipality needs. This cooperation enables municipalities to embark on what would otherwise be cost prohibitive projects by sharing in the costs of doing things and making sure that you have most up-to-date and recent data in order to inform everything from planning to building and to asset management, those types of things that you use your GIS to enable. So again, this is another opportunity for regional or local collaboration, looking at striking up that discussion with your neighbors, exploring the opportunities as a way of augmenting your capacity and making sure that you're getting the full value out of what a GIS has to offer for you in terms of managing your operations and also making decisions around key policy and program offerings. Your Worship, I'll stop there and see if there are any questions.
Mayor, if I can.
Yeah, go ahead.
All right, thank you, Worship. So I just is something, this was our last opportunity, and I wanted to note, although we definitely understand the regionalization and the shared services and whether they're material or the service itself, I just want council to know as well, we understand as well, although there are some financial aspects to it, we also don't want to lose our identity of what Essex is, right? And the successes that we have as a council and what we created here as a culture. So it is a balancing game between, okay, well, where can we save money, whether it's GIS or building, but we don't want to ensure we lose, the quality of what we've provided to date for our residents and our level of service. So that's something that I guess administration is aware of. It's something that Chris and I have talked about already. So I guess I don't want to say I'm comforting council, but letting you know that's definitely high on my list of preserving and maintaining. So yes, we want to save money and we want to be better, but not at the expense or cost of what we've achieved already. So
thank you, Chris. Anybody else from council? No. Okay, Chris, I guess you can continue.
So, Your Worship, that's the end of the presentation. Just by way of summary, I would echo Chris's sentiment. You are to be commended for the great job that you're doing and that your staff are doing. Most of these things are in the vein of continuous improvement and enhancing the productivity of the place. That's going to be key to continuing to be a lean but not starved organization that delivers high quality services. And in terms of where the future lies in terms of bottom line dollar savings, that is in the shared services realm, and doing that where it makes strategic sense to do it and allows the municipality to preserve its identity, but also to be able to stretch the value of its taxpayers' dollars and leverage what comes with sharing and services. Is I think the next frontier, not just for municipalities like Essex and its peers in the county, but for your peers across the province. This is a recurring theme that is coming up. It's something that is happening in the broader public sector already for the last 20 years or so. And there's real value to be generated in appropriate places where shared services make sense for the municipality. So with that, Your Worship, I'll say thank you very much for the opportunity to work with you. I hope this exercise is helpful. I think it will be, and wish the town nothing but much success on a go forward basis.
Thank you, Chris, and it was a great presentation, and I'm sure we got a lot out of it. So thank you very much. Any questions? Deputy Mayor Malash, you had a question?
Yeah, I just want to say about the whole report. It was a good thinking out of the box report. It's giving us an opportunity to look at how we do things, and I can see that administration's already moving forward on some of the ideas that were presented in the report. For instance, the field tablets in the building department. But it's always worthwhile looking at the way you currently do things to see if there's a way that you can do them better. So thanks, Chris, to you and your team for bringing those forward to us.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor.
Anybody else? Councillor Bjorken, go ahead.
Yeah, just to say, just a quick thank you for the report. Continuous improvement is the name of the game. I keep going back to page 5. There's the two headlines there. Is the town of Essex. It's financially healthy and sustainable. and they're delivering efficient and high-quality services. There's a lot of communities out there that would love to have their report start with that page. So it's tremendous to see where we are, and that continuous improvement will make it better. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Anybody else? No? Okay, Chris, thank you for the report.
Thank you.
Yeah, I need a motion to receive Chris's report. Councillor Bowman and Councillor Bjorkman. All in favor? It's carried.
Your worship, just one question, sorry. Chris, in other municipalities, are simply receiving, or are they receiving, and is there something more they're doing, Chris? Are they, receiving it in principle? I don't know, I guess.
Council's receiving the report and referring it to staff for implementation. And so most municipalities are then breaking this up based on, they'll be taking how do I say this? It's not one full package. It'll come in. Some of it will be in this upcoming year's budget. Other things are kind of on the radar for future budgets in future years.
So receipt of it is satisfactory, I guess, right now?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. That's all I wanted to confirm. Thanks, Mayor.
Okay, thank you. And I guess at the end of the presentation, I guess we'll move right into adjournment. I need a mover to adjourn. Deputy Mayor Milosh and Councillor Bowman, all in favor. Thank you. And once again, Chris, thank you very much for the report.
Be safe, everybody, and Merry Christmas.
Yeah, Merry Christmas to you too.
Yeah, sure.